Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today, we're taking you deep into the heart of Texas, a land where the earth holds secrets and people vanish like dust on the wind. You've heard the legends, but some places don't just haunt you, they erase. You doubt from long-forgotten ghost towns to hidden trails that don't appear on any map. These are the places locals whisper about. Places where people walk in and never walk out. And hey, I've been making horror stories for months now. But, you know what's strange? I've never asked you, what kind of horror stories do you like watching? Paranormal? Real-life disappearances? Creepy small-town legends? Let me know in the comments. Seriously, I read every single one. And your answer might just inspire the next video. But before we go further, here's something even creepier. Most viewers make one huge mistake: they leave without subscribing. And by doing that, they miss out on the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the boldest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because today is just the beginning. And in Texas, some disappearances are never solved, and some roads lead to places you were never meant to find. So, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because the sun may be up where you are. But here on Creepy Vibes, the night is always just getting started. Now, let's dive into the darkness. They say it's just a dry canyon, a slice of sun-blasted earth carved by flash floods and time, a forgotten fold in the desert where jackrabbits scatter like smoke and rattlesnakes bake beneath mesquite shadows. On maps, it doesn't even have a name, just a crack in the land north of Highway 90, a few miles west of Marfa. But folks around there, the ones who've been long enough to know what not to talk about, they call it Dead Man's Gulch. Not out of superstition, not for show. It's just what it is. Dead men go in, none come out. The last time anyone went looking down there was the summer of '80. You might have heard about it. A group of 5 hikers from El Paso, college kids, all of them fit, smart, and geared up with everything short of satellite uplinks. They parked near an old barbed wire gate, took a selfie in front of the warning sign that read, "No trespassing, trespassers will vanish," then marched into the desert like they owned it. They'd heard the stories, but they thought it was a joke, a local myth. 3 days later, a rancher found their truck still parked by the fence, keys in the ignition, bottles of water sweating in the sun. Search parties went in, sheriffs, helicopters, dogs. They found gear, boots laid out in a neat little row, phones stacked like pancakes on a flat rock, every backpack zipped and placed in a perfect circle like some kind of ritual. Not a single footprint beyond that point. Not one sign of struggle. No blood. Just the whispering wind moving through the canyon like breath through rotting teeth. The locals weren't surprised. Some even said they'd warn them. But nobody ever listens. When the desert talks soft, I didn't believe any of it. Not really. Stories like that live in dry places because there's nothing else for them to do. The desert breeds ghosts when people forget how empty it really is. But then I got that call from my brother. He was shaking on the line, I could hear it. Not crying, past that. Whispering like he didn't want something to hear him. "You ever heard of Dead Man's Gulch?" He asked. My gut dropped. "Yeah," I said. "Why?" He paused for so long I thought the line had gone dead. Then he said, "I think it's watching me." My brother Dale was a loner, always had been. 10 years older than me, did 2 tours in Iraq, came back with less to say and more to drink. He bought a trailer just outside Marfa, one of those ancient aluminum shells that cook you alive by day and freeze you at night. It sat on 20 acres of dust and rock, just him and the coyotes and a busted satellite dish that hadn't worked since the Bush administration. He liked it that way. Said the silence helped him sleep. I drove out that night, Hit Marfa just after 11 p.m. The town was quiet, too quiet even for a desert town. Not a single porch light on, not a dog barking. Like someone had pulled the life out of it with a syringe. I passed through without stopping and headed north along a dirt road that twisted like a drunk snake. The moon was high, and everything looked brittle under it. Silver bones of dead cattle, shredded tarps flapping on fences, tumbleweeds caught like corpses in barbed wire. When I reached Dale's trailer, the door was swinging open. Inside. It was dark. The place smelled like sweat and gun oil. His pistol was on the table, fully loaded. A single chair faced the window, where the curtain had been pulled aside just enough for someone to watch the desert. There was no sign of Dale Dodd except for the note dot. It was scrawled in the back of his old Army manual, the one he used to keep under his bed. It knows your name. When it says it, don't answer. Below that, in shaking letters, if I'm not back by dawn, don't come looking. Of course I did. I didn't even think twice. He was my brother. I set out with a flashlight, a compass, and a .38 that hadn't been cleaned in a decade. The path was faint, more suggestion than trail, just a series of old coyote tracks that led down into a sunken stretch of desert. I walked for hours. The stars turned over like bones in a dark sky, the Milky Way a scar above me. My boots crunched on dry stone. There was no sound but the wind. It didn't howl. It whispered. I didn't catch it at first. It was too soft, like the dry scrape of brush or the hush of shifting sand. But the further I went, the more it changed. It grew more articulate, less random. I could hear my name, not shouted. Not. Spoken. Whispered. Double quotes Ethan. I froze. The beam of my flashlight jittered across the rocks. Nothing there. Just the gulch, a yawning crack in the earth ahead, blacker than the night around it. My stomach churned. My brother had gone down there, and I was about to follow him. Dead Man's Gulch wasn't a canyon in the traditional sense. It didn't snake or open up into valleys. It was a wound. A cleft in the land that dropped straight down, like God had driven a blade into the desert. The walls were narrow and steep, the ground dry and cracked. And cold. That was the first thing I noticed. A deep, unnatural cold that bit through my jeans like sleet. I descended slowly. My light danced across twisted roots, bones bleached white by the sun, claw marks etched into stone. I told myself they were made by animals, but they weren't. Too straight. Too deep. I walked for what felt like miles. Time bent down there. My watch had stopped. My phone was dead. The air was heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. And then I saw the circle. Backpacks, phones, bottles, arranged just like in the stories. Perfect symmetry. And in the center, an open notebook, Dale's. I picked it up with shaking hands. It doesn't kill you. It takes you, makes you part of it. The wind is not wind, it's breath. It feeds on names, on memory, on who you think. You are. If you stay too long, you forget yourself. That's why no one comes back. They don't know how. There was more. Pages of it. Ramblings. Please. Prayers. And then the last line, I think I'm already gone. That's when I heard it again. Ethan. It was behind me. I turned, fast. Nothing. But the whisper came again. Closer. Ethan. I backed away. The flashlight flickered. The wind pressed against my skin like cold fingers. I ran. I don't know how I got out. I remember falling, cutting my palms on stone. I remember the sound of whispering growing louder, overlapping, hundreds of voices, all calling my name in different tones, accents, even in my brother's voice. I remember screaming. When I came to, I was lying near the fence where the hikers had parked. My truck was still there. The sun was rising. Blood on my hands. Dirt in my mouth. The Dale's notebook clenched in my fist. I never found him. No one did. I left Marfa that same day. Sold the truck. Moved back east. Got therapy. Got sober, but some nights when the wind is just right, I hear it outside my window. Not howling. Whispering. My name. They still talk about it at the truck stop west of Sonora. Low voices, late at night, over black coffee and half-burned cigarettes. You have to listen for it. Sift through the talk about axle repairs and bad dispatchers, but eventually someone will mention it. Highway 277, just south of the Devil's Backbone. A stretch of road only a mile long. The vanishing mile. They say tires shred there. CB radios hiss like they're underwater. Clocks jump around like the hands have gone rabid. Most truckers reroute without thinking, even if it adds 2 hours to the trip. Those who don't, they see things. The state painted over it, rerouted the GPS lines, even denied it exists. But the old road's still there, cracked and sunbaked. And if you know where to look, just past mile marker 211, you can still see the rusting carcass of a yellow school bus half buried in Johnson. Grass. It happened in October of '92. No warning. 1 minute, a field trip from Azona Elementary was headed home, full of laughing fourth graders in Halloween costumes. The next, the bus was stopped dead in the middle of the loop. Engine fried, tires melted into the asphalt. No crash, no blood, no tracks leading away. Just a bus and the kind of silence that makes your ears hurt. The driver was found sitting in the front seat, catatonic, eyes wide and dry, whispering a name over and over. Maribeth. No one on the list of students was named Maribeth. They never found the kids. 23 of them. Gone without a trace. They brought in dogs, helicopters, even Navajo trackers. Nothing. Like the desert just opened up and swallowed them whole. I know all this because my uncle was one of the troopers first on the scene. He didn't talk about it much, but after enough beers he'd let things slip. Said there was something wrong with the sky over that stretch. The sun was up when they got there, but shadows stretched the wrong direction. Said the air tasted like pennies. Said the birds wouldn't fly over it. They'd wheel in the sky, screeching, then veer away like they hit a wall. He never got over it. Hung himself in '97. My aunt found him in the garage. Radio on full blast, tuned to static. I never believed any of it, not really. Not until I broke down there myself last year. I was hauling cattle feed from San Angelo down to Eagle Pass. Rolling south just after dusk, with the road bleeding orange in the rear view and the buzz of cicadas getting swallowed by the engine growl. I had just passed Sonora, figured I'd be clear of the hill country soon, when the CB went nuts. Not the usual static or trucker chatter. This was a high-pitched shriek, like someone dragging a mic across gravel. Then it cut out. Then came a voice. Not a voice. My voice. It said my name. Just that. Like a whisper pressed right to the back of my skull. I pulled over, thinking I was hallucinating, heat stroke or something. Checked my watch, 7:42. Checked the dash clock, 9:15. My phone said 6:03. Then the truck died. Not a sputter, not a warning light, just silence. Like someone had yanked the cord out of the wall. And in the silence, I heard it. Children laughing. I swear to Christ, it was all around me. High-pitched giggles, little feet running on gravel, fingers tapping on the passenger side glass. But the road was empty. Desert for miles. No other cars, no houses. Just me, my truck, and the wind. I got out. Don't ask me why. Just felt like if I stayed in the cab, something worse would happen. The second my boots hit the pavement, I felt it. Like walking into a freezer. The air was thick, almost buzzing. The horizon shimmered like heat haze, but it was cold. Dead cold. I could see. My breath. The bus was there, not up the road. Not in the ditch. Right in front of me. One blink and it was just there, 20 feet ahead. Same faded yellow, same shattered windows. The door hung open, swaying slightly like someone had just stepped out. Or in, I should have turned around. I know that, but something pulled me. Curiosity, sure, but more than that, like gravity. Like something inside the bus was waiting. I walked up, one step, then another. The asphalt beneath my feet felt soft like tar in summer. My boots made no sound. The wind stopped. Inside, it smelled like wet copper and old sweat. The seats were shredded, like an animal had gone wild. Dust floated in the air like pollen, catching the last rays of the sun. But it wasn't just dust. There were specks, tiny shapes, moving on their own, twisting, pulsing like microscopic worms. I reached the back seat. That's where I saw there was a girl sitting there. Couldn't have been more than 10. Black hair and pigtails. Halloween witch costume, half torn. She looked up at me and smiled, eyes all pupil. No white at all. Maribeth, she said, and the moment she spoke her name, I remembered her. I don't know how, but I did. Recess, lunch tables, passing notes, a song she used to hum. A kid who'd never existed in my life, yet somehow had been part of it, deep down, in a place I hadn't known existed. Then her smile faded. She looked past me, toward the front of the bus. They want you now. The air sucked out of the bus like a vacuum. My ears popped. Everything went black. When I woke up, it was daylight. My truck was a quarter-mile down the road, engine running. The bus was gone. I staggered back, found the driver's side door open. The radio was playing something soft, slow, an old waltz, maybe. My phone was dead. My watch said 8:08. I started driving and didn't stop until I hit Del Rio. I filed a report. Told them the truck broke down, nothing else. Who'd believe? The rest? But I can't shake her face, Maribeth, that smile. Like she was glad to see me. Like she'd been waiting. And sometimes, when I drive long stretches at night, I hear things in the static again. Laughter, footsteps, my name. They say the vanishing mile is quiet these days. Nothing's happened in years, but the road's still there, and the bus is waiting. It started the way these things always start, with the kind of quiet that doesn't sit right in your bones. The kind of quiet that makes your ears ring just to fill the void. The kind of quiet that feels ... watch ... Angelina Forest stretched. Across the piney woods of East Texas like something half asleep, ancient and waiting. Locals gave it a wide berth, called it cursed with the casualness of people who'd rather not explain themselves. They said it was just old folklore, haunted ground, Indian burial sites, satanic panic leftovers, but none of them would walk the trails after dusk. Not even the teenagers, and that told you plenty. Back in 2004, a couple named Mark and Lydia drove down from Tyler. They were early 20s, college sweethearts, the kind of couple that wore matching windbreakers, and said things like adventure weekend without irony. They were staying 3 nights in a patch of national forest that hadn't had a ranger check-in in over 3 months. No one found them. Just the tent, still staked into the cold ground, upright like nothing had disturbed it. But inside was a different story. Claw marks. Long, deep, gouged through both sides of the vinyl. Not some animal from outside, but marks that started inside, as if someone or something had tried to get out in a frenzy. The sleeping bags were shredded. One of them had a phone still half tucked in a side pocket, battery long dead, lens shattered. No blood. No signs of struggle, no screams heard by nearby campers. Just the lingering reek of sulfur that clung to the nylon fabric, like a matchbook lid and buried beneath the earth. But that was 20 years ago. Things got buried in the news cycle. Urban legend. Kids on Reddit posted the photos. Yeah, someone went in there afterward, took shots before the rangers cordoned off the area. The claw marks were real. Some say it was a bear. Some say drugs. One guy swore it was a military test site, but ask someone who's lived near Angelina long enough, and they'll tell you the truth without ever speaking it. Their eyes shift. They cross themselves, even the Baptists. They tell you don't go past Hollow Creek, that place ... It don't echo right. The sound's wrong, they say. And it is. Hollow Creek's just a trickle now, used to be deeper. Years ago, but something about the way it winds through the pines, the air feels denser there. Voices don't carry. Animals stay out. Birds go silent ... and the trees ... the trees grow too straight. That's not just a phrase. Go look yourself. They run in perfect lines, like some giant hand laid them down like fence posts. Even the underbrush keeps to a weird pattern, like someone designed it. No natural forest grows like that. Nobody noticed when people started vanishing. Not at first. Hunters, hikers, campers, but always the same spot, and always the same silence afterward. Sometimes they were found. Sometimes not. In 2022, a man named Randall Ford went up there with his teenage son, Micah. They wanted to reconnect. Micah had been suspended from school for fighting, and Randall figured some quality time in the woods might reset him. They made it one night. A storm hit unexpectedly. No thunder, just that rolling gray kind of rain that smothers everything. Randall's last message was a photo on Instagram, him holding up a hot dog over the fire. Micah blurred in the background, laughing. You could just make out the tent behind them. The caption said, "Beats Xbox. The search party found the fire pit still warm. 2 chairs, one knocked over. The tent again, still staked, still upright. Inside were more claw marks, ripped up, sleeping bags, and that smell. Sulfur, like someone lit 10 packs of matches and ground them into the dirt. They found something else. 2, a phone. This time it had battery left. They got a single video off it, 1 minute, 42 seconds. It wasn't uploaded to the public, but I saw it. A friend in forestry got me a copy back when they were still debating whether to label it a missing persons case or something else entirely. It's shaky, like all those videos are, but you can tell Micah was the one filming. He's in the tent, whispering, "Dad, there's something outside. I can see it moving by the trees. It's too tall, Dad. It's not a bear." He unzips the flap, just a crack. You can see the trees. Still. Too still. Not a breath of wind. Then, movement. Between 2 pines, something shifts. It's like, imagine a man, but stretched, elongated, joints bent wrong, and black. Not just. Dark. Black, like a hole punched through the world. No details. No eyes. Just a silhouette that twitches like old film skipping frames. Micah breathes too loud. The thing turns. No eyes, but you feel it's looking. The video cuts out in static and a low, distorted groan. Not quite a roar. Almost ... words, like it was. Learning how to speak. That was the last time anyone recorded anything in Hollow Creek. Now, people still go missing. One woman, retired school teacher from Jasper, went mushroom hunting near the creek. Never came back. Her car was found half a mile from the trailhead. Inside was a book on foraging and an open thermos. Still warm. They searched for her a week. Dogs wouldn't go past the creek. Whined, turned around. Some flat out laid down and refused to budge. The Forest Service doesn't send people in anymore. They say it's due to hazardous terrain and erosion risk. Bullshit. Locals whisper about what it really is. Some call it a thin place, where the veil between worlds is thin, torn open long ago by something best left forgotten. Some say it's not from this side at all, that whatever lives in those woods didn't walk in through the trees but came up from under them. The native stories are worse. An old man named Osceola, full-blood Alabama Coushatta, once spoke about the Kakakas, spirits that don't belong to the cycle of the land. They wear no faces, he said. They were never born. They only know hunger and mimicry. He died in his sleep the night after he said that. Peaceful, they said. But when they found his body, his hands were clutched over his face. Eyes open, mouth torn wide like he'd screamed something out of himself just before the end. Last week, someone posted drone footage online. They were flying a quadcopter over Hollow Creek. It started fine, trees below, stream winding through like a voe. Silver vein. The same weird, unnatural symmetry of trunks and branches. Then, static. The drone feed went black for 3 seconds. When it came back, it was 10 feet lower. Looking straight down. There were footprints in the dirt below. Bare feet. Human-shaped but wrong. Too long, toes too far apart. And deep. Like something heavy had passed through. The drone didn't make it back. They found the casing the next morning. About 50 yards from where the GPS had gone dead. It was melted. Not broken. Not smashed. Warped. Like plastic left near an open flame. I don't know what's in Hollow Creek. I don't want to know. But I'll tell you this. There's a reason people don't hear screams in those woods. It's not that. They don't happen. It's that the sound doesn't leave. It was the kind of place that didn't make the news. Not because strange things didn't happen there, but because people in Mission, Texas, learned a long time ago not to talk about the well behind St. Adalbert's. You wouldn't find it on any current map. The newer ones showed the church's backlot as a flat concrete square surrounded by rusted chain-link fencing. Nothing more, not even a marker or plaque. Just a cracked slab of concrete, stained and slightly uneven, like the earth beneath it wasn't quite done shifting. But if you grew up in Mission in the late 1980s or early 90s, you remembered the stories. You remembered the dares. And if you were brave or stupid enough to walk out behind the church at night, you remembered the sound. They said the well had been there since before the church was built, since before the town was called Mission at all. Back when it was just brushland, dirt roads, and the occasional shack thrown up by hopeful farmers, the well sat there like a wound in the ground. Locals said it wasn't dug, that the ground just opened one day, wide and wet and breathing. Priests never blessed it. Not even once. That alone said more than the Sunday sermons ever could. Kids went out there on dares, mostly. You'd have to be at least 12, they said. Old enough to make your own decisions, young enough to still be stupid. They'd sneak out past dusk, hop the fence that wasn't there yet, and creep through the back lot, the dry grass crackling under their feet like bones. The well was 6 feet across and made of ancient stone, moss-slicked and pitted with age. The lip of it was stained dark where water once splashed up, though no one ever saw water in it, not in living memory. Just blackness, deeper than any flashlight could pierce. They said if you leaned over it at midnight, real still, you could hear someone whispering, not in English, not in Spanish either, something wetter, something older. Most kids just ran. A few stayed longer, swore they heard crying or laughter, or a heartbeat that didn't match their own. And then there was Araceli Dominguez, 15, quiet, smart. The kind of girl who volunteered at the library and read thick paperbacks with cracked spines. She didn't care about dares. She didn't care about the church. She only went because her brother dared her in front of everyone at Jamie's birthday party, and he knew exactly which buttons to press. "You believe in science, right?" he'd said, mocking her. "Then go prove it's just an old hole." So, she did. She showed up in jeans and a denim jacket, her long black hair tied back, flashlight in hand. No drama, no build-up. Just walked out behind the church around midnight on October 3rd, 1992. There were 6 other kids there. They all remember that. 6 sets of eyes watched her step up to the well's edge. She looked down, clicked on her flashlight, and stared. Into the dark. "Nothing," she said at first. Then she frowned, tilted her head, leaned in. The beam of her flashlight shivered, then dropped, vanishing into the black dot her hand followed. Then her head. She didn't scream right away. That's the part they all remembered. She leaned in as if listening to something, and then, without warning, snapped forward like she'd been yanked. One of the boys, Ernesto, lunged and caught her jacket, but it peeled off in his hand like wet paper. She screamed once, a horrible, ragged shriek, and then it went silent. For a second, everyone stood frozen, waiting to see if she'd climb back out. Then the screaming started again. It didn't stop. For 3 nights, the screaming came from the well. They tried covering it, tried filling it with rocks, with dirt, with water. Nothing worked. The sound came through everything. On the second night, they lowered a camera. No one likes to talk about the footage. The priest who agreed to the attempt, Father Grigori, left town the next morning. Left a note on his desk that just said, "We were never supposed to look." The footage started normally. Just stone, endless and repeating, like the camera was falling past the same walls over and over. Then came the face. It wasn't Arafeli's, not exactly. It resembled her same bone structure, same lips, but it had no eyes. Just smooth, unbroken. Skin stretched over the sockets. It was smiling. Not wide, not cartoonish. Just pleased. Like something had finally gotten what it wanted, and it was still moving. Breathing, just barely. The skin trembled, the jaw twitched. The smile never faltered. They sealed the well the next day, poured concrete down into the pit, until the screams turned to muffled whispers, then faded completely. Covered the top with steel, more concrete, and then a slab they poured on site. They fenced it off, posted warnings. Claimed it was a sinkhole. Said the church was undergoing renovations. They shut down the youth group, changed pastors. Quietly, the town moved on, but the lot behind the church? It never stayed still. Dogs won't walk past it. Kids say there. Phones die if they get too close. One boy said he saw handprints on the concrete, tiny ones pressed from underneath. His parents say he hasn't slept since. And sometimes, if you're walking past late at night after a thunderstorm, when the air smells of wet metal and ozone, you might hear something from behind the chain link. Not a voice exactly, but breathing. And if you do get close enough to press your ear against the concrete, if you dare, you'll hear something else. Not screaming, laughing. It was August when the heat turned the red dirt of Abilene into dust so fine it clung to your skin like a second layer. The sun pressed down with something more than weight. It meant something. Out in those woods northwest of town, near the edge of some forgotten oil lease road, something else boiled beneath the summer scorch. The locals didn't go out there anymore. Said there was no game, said it felt wrong. A few mentioned smells, burnt meat, wet dog, ozone, but most just shook their heads and looked away. That part of the forest had no name on the maps, just a jagged outline and satellite imagery. The Forestry Service called it Quadrant 9C, a patch of pine, oak, and cedar so dense and still that birds never seemed to settle in its canopy. On the last Saturday of the month, the ranger team was out in that quadrant, clearing brush around. A washed-out trail where a hiker had broken her ankle the week before. 5 of them, 3 veterans and 2 rookies. Only 4 came back. The rookie who vanished was named Michael Graves, 23. Quiet type, but dependable. Ex-Army. His personnel file said, observant, calm, under pressure. Didn't drink, didn't party. The kind of guy you'd trust to walk ahead in the dark with just a flashlight and a .45. He was paired that day with a ranger named Ellie Trent, 36. Sharp-tongued and superstitious to the bone. They found it around noon. It was Ellie's. Voice on the radio, high and tight, like she was trying not to breathe too loud. Dispatch, we have an anomalous structure at grid ref B3-7. No foundations. It's a staircase. Just a staircase. Copy? The reply crackled, garbled. Something about reception in that stretch of woods. Radios always fuzzed out, phones went dead, even GPS flickered and lied. The other 3 rangers converged on Ellie's coordinates 20 minutes later. There it was, standing alone in the shade of a thick cedar grove. The staircase. It was about 16 steps tall. Oak by the look, polished and perfect, no weathering, no debris, no dust. No signs of dragging or building or aging. It stood there like it had always been there, and yet the forest around it looked untouched. The earth beneath it was undisturbed, like it grew straight out of the soil. Nobody spoke. The wind didn't move the leaves. No bugs chirped. No branches creaked. Michael was the first to move. He stepped forward, circled it once, whistled low. It's not anchored, just standing. Trent hissed at him. Don't touch it. But he was already on the second step. The others yelled. Ellie cursed. Someone reached out. By the time Michael's boot hit the top step, he just vanished. Not fell. Not blinked or warped, he folded. Like space around him gave up. One heartbeat he was there. The next, empty air. The sound was like a soda can crushed between teeth. Wet. Final. They ran. Grown adults. All of them trained, armed, tough as boot leather, but they bolted. Left the equipment. Didn't stop until they hit the edge of the gravel access road. Trent threw up. One of the others dropped to his knees and started praying. When they returned with backup 2 hours later, the staircase was gone. No prints, no drag marks. Not even a bent blade of grass where it had been. And no Michael. The following weeks brought little sleep to those involved. Trent quit. She left a voice message on the lead ranger's phone at 3 a.m., sobbing and repeating the same phrase. It's still out there. Not in the woods, but it's still here. They found her truck by Lake Fort Phantom a week later, door open, headlights on. She was never seen again. The department scrubbed the records. The ranger reports were edited and the location quietly designated a restricted burn area due to unexploded ordnance. No patrols, no research, no discussion, but stories leak. In the years that followed, a handful of others went looking. Reddit threads, paranormal bloggers. A kid from San Angelo live-streamed a hike out there and never came home. His phone was found 20 miles away on the roof of a bait shop in Baird, playing footage of trees that didn't match any known growth patterns in Texas. Trees with silver leaves and red sap. Locals started calling it the staircase in nowhere. They say if you go deep enough into those woods and walk long enough, doesn't matter the direction. Just keep going after the map stops making sense. You'll find it. It always looks new, always clean, always quiet. Some see it in moonlight, some in mist. Some say it hums like a microwave left open. All agree. If you climb it, you don't come back. A retired ranger named Bill Harrow, one of the original 5, who found the staircase, now lives out in a shack near Sweetwater. They say he talks to himself at night, not muttering, full conversations. Sometimes, if you sit on his porch and wait, You'll hear him repeat coordinates under his breath. Sometimes you'll hear him weep. Last month, 2 college kids from Abilene Christian went missing in that quadrant. They left their car by a hunting gate, walked in with cameras and MREs, joking about making a Texas Blair Witch sequel. Rangers found the car, found the camp, found a ring of salt around their tent, but no blood, no sign of struggle, no tracks going out. Only thing left behind was a short video clip on a cracked phone. 30 seconds, shaky, breathing fast, low light. The camera moves past twisted trees and suddenly swings to the right, and there it is, the staircase. At the top, just for a moment, a figure, naked, pale, mouth open too wide, eyes black and too large. Its arms seemed to stretch too long as it turned its head down to the camera dot, then static dot and silence dot. No birds, no wind, no world dot, only steps waiting. Gaslight Alley wasn't on any of the official maps of the San Antonio Historic District, at least not anymore. You could find it on older ones, the kind sold in antique stores or folded up in yellowing books in the back of the Central Library. The alley itself still existed, a narrow vein of cobbled brick running behind a stretch of restored 19th century storefronts, not far from the old Spanish governor's palace. But it was one of those places you didn't stumble upon. You had to know to look. Tourists passed it sometimes, especially in the evening, after they'd filled themselves with margaritas and enchiladas along the Riverwalk and were in search of spooks. Ghost tours loved to bring people near it, close. Enough to whisper stories with flashlights under their chins, but never too close. The guides warned not to step inside. Cameras wouldn't work there. Phones would crash. You'd feel the cold, even in August. Even in the dead air that clung to South Texas like plastic wrap dot, the locals didn't mention it. The ones who grew up near it or worked near it or just heard the stories passed around over beers in backyards. They knew better. The girl in white, that was the story people liked to tell. The romantic version. Young, barefoot, lost in time, walking slow like a dream. She wasn't a threat in the story. She was tragic, misunderstood. Some said she was a victim of a love affair gone wrong, stabbed by a jealous fiancé, or maybe a plague victim buried under the city when it was still a colonial outpost. But there were other versions, the ones people said under their breath. And then there was the incident in October. The woman on the tour who just vanished. Her name was Karen Ruiz, a 38-year-old dental hygienist from Abilene, in town for a weekend getaway with 2 friends. They'd booked the Haunts of Old San Anton tour for Friday night, drawn in by the promise of a walking adventure through the oldest parts of the city, places where people said the walls breathed and the shadows listened. There were 15 people on the tour that night. The guide's name was Tyler. He was in his 20s, the kind of guy who wore a top hat and carried an oil lamp for effect, even though it was all for show. But when they reached the edge of Gaslight Alley, he dropped the act. The change in his tone was subtle, like someone who just remembered a private trauma. "This is as close as we get," he said. "You can take pictures if you want, but I wouldn't bother. They won't turn out." The alley itself was narrow, maybe 10 feet wide and 60 long, with a wrought iron gate at the end that had long been sealed shut with rust and padlocks. The bricks underfoot were dark, damp, and uneven. The walls on either side were the backs of 19th century buildings, old limestone and red brick crusted with black mildew and paint rot. There were no lights in the alley, just a dull amber glow from the street lamp behind them. Karen was standing near the front of the group when it happened. According to witness statements, she turned her head to the right and smiled, not at anyone in the group, but at something just inside the alley. She stepped forward. Her friends called her name, but she didn't answer. She walked slowly into the dark, her sandals clicking softly against the cobblestones. She reached the middle of the alley, stopped, tilted her head, like she was listening to something, and then she was gone. No flash, no sound. Just gone. Her purse hit the ground a second later, like a delayed effect. It landed upright, the strap coiled like a snake on the bricks. Someone screamed. Tyler dropped his lamp. They found nothing. No blood, no torn clothing. Karen Ruiz was never seen again, but her scent stayed. That was the part that made people uncomfortable, even more than the vanishing. Witnesses said the smell of her perfume, a soft, powdery vanilla, lingered in the alley for days. Some said weeks. Even after rain. Even after city workers hosed the place down. It clung to the bricks. That wasn't the only time something had happened there. There was an old report from 1983 about a homeless man named Javier who was found dead in the alley, curled in a fetal position, face twisted in horror. Cause of death was ruled as a heart attack, but the paramedics said his eyes were wide open and blood vessels had burst in them. Like he'd seen something that stopped his heart mid-beat. In 1996, a teenage couple dared each other to walk down the alley at midnight. Only the boy came back. The girl, Maria Hernandez, disappeared for 3 days. When she returned, barefoot and covered in brick dust, she was mute, completely nonverbal. She was committed to a psychiatric facility and never spoke again. Her medical records were sealed. Some said the alley was cursed. Others said it was a thin place, where the world rubbed raw between dimensions, but a few, mostly the older ones, believed something lived there. A girl, yes, but not a ghost. Something older than that. Something that wore the shape of a girl. Something that invited you to see it if you looked long enough. The alley had a way of turning your thoughts in on themselves. People said you'd hear your name whispered from behind, or catch a glimpse of someone familiar, a dead parent, a long-lost friend, standing just inside the shadows, smiling faintly. They'd reach out their hand. You'd feel the air go still, the world contract. Your breath catch, and then you'd be gone. The city quietly fenced off the alley after Karen Ruiz disappeared. But people kept coming. Ghost hunters, TikTokers, thrill seekers. Most didn't see anything, but some, a select few, did. There was a viral video posted in April by a college student who claimed he saw the girl. The footage was corrupted, a 23-second clip of static, warped faces, something pale moving quickly in the background. The audio was worse, a whispering loop that no software could clean up, no matter how many filters were applied. Sounded like someone repeating, "You saw me," over and over, faster and faster until it collapsed into a screech. The student deleted his account 2 days later. He moved back home, dropped out of school, and the alley waited. Every so often, someone new would vanish. Not always in front of a crowd. Sometimes it was just a missing person last seen near the historic district. A college girl on spring break. A cab driver taking a shortcut. And always the scent lingered. They say the girl in white isn't alone anymore. That she brings people with her now. That if you look closely at the dark between the bricks, you can see the outline of faces, not screaming, not begging, just watching and smiling. The first time anyone heard about the caves north of Canyon, Texas, was in the aftermath of a dry lightning storm that tore through the Panhandle in late August, the kind of storm that cracked open the sky like brittle bone but never gave a drop of rain, the kind that left the land thirstier than before it came. There was a gang of 6 bikers, real desert rats with sunburnt necks and tattoos of skulls and iron crosses. They called themselves the Devil's Teeth. Their leader, a big half-Apache named Colt, had a voice like gravel and a stare that could crack a windshield. They were passing through on their way to a rally in Albuquerque, chasing the heat, the dust, and whatever trouble they could sniff out. They were last seen at a gas station outside Amarillo, mouths full of jerky, tanks full of diesel, making rude jokes to a girl working the counter. The security cam caught them peeling off westbound, kicking up a trail of dust into the open country. They weren't seen again for nearly 3 weeks, and even then, only one of them came back. A rancher named Will Tilden found the bikes. 2 of them, anyway, parked neat and orderly under a rock outcropping near the edge of Palo Duro Canyon. They looked abandoned, but the chrome was still warm when he touched it. One had a cracked seat, a red bandana tied to the handlebar. The other was painted matte black, and its ignition was still turned on. The headlight glowing weakly in the afternoon sundot. There were no tracks around them, not even boot prints. No blood, no sign of a struggle. Just the bikes, humming like confused animals that had wandered too far from home. Then, 3 weeks after they vanished, one of them showed up near a truck stop off Highway 87, naked, blistered, his skin powdered with pale dust like he'd been buried alive. He was half-starved, clutching a jagged piece of black stone, mumbling and drooling, eyes rolling into the back of his head every time someone spoke to him. When the EMTs tried to get him onto the stretcher, he screamed so hard he vomited blood. They had to sedate him twice. He never gave a name. Didn't need to. His prints matched a man named Rudy Mendez, one of Colt's crew. He had a rap sheet a mile long and tattoos on every inch of his body, but now all of that was barely visible beneath cracked, flaking skin. His hair had turned bone white. The worst part, they said, was the way he smiled when the sedation started to wear off. Like he knew something nobody else did. Like the world was a joke he had finally gotten the punchline to, and it had left him broken. They locked him up in a psych ward in Lubbock under suicide watch. He didn't speak for days. Then, when the thunderstorms rolled back over the canyon, he started shrieking that no one could make sense of it at first. He spoke in a language that sounded ancient and wet, full of choking sounds and guttural moans, like a man drowning with every word. He clawed at the walls, painted spirals with his own shit, and jabbed black suns on the plaster with his fingernails until they bled. He tore at his own ears and cried blood whenever someone said the word cave. The doctors brought in a linguist from the university. She listened to a recording of him and went pale. Sighed it resembled some obscure Proto-Uto-Aztecan dialect, only older. Much older. She played it backward through audio software, just to see, and bolted from the room before the tape finished. She wouldn't come back. They say she later claimed that what she heard backward was English, barely audible beneath the guttural noises. A whisper repeating over and over, "We are beneath. We are awake. No one ever found the caves." At least, not officially, but there were rumors. People out in that flat nothingness talking about strange winds coming out of the canyon like breathing, warm, moist, and foul, even in the dead of winter. A sheriff's deputy claimed he saw flickers of movement from the cliffs one night. Not lights, not fire, but shadows. As if something was walking around inside the rock, just beneath the surface, casting silhouettes that didn't match anything. Natural, Colt's brother, a man named Denny with a wooden leg and a throat tattoo of a snake, went out looking for him. He never came back either. His leg did, though. A hiker found it leaning against a stone altar made of stacked bones at the bottom of a dry ravine. The flesh was stripped clean, but the boot was still on. Rudy eventually stopped screaming. Now he just sits in his padded room and draws. All day, every day. Hundreds of pages of cave mouths, descending staircases, and suns painted solid black. He refuses to eat anything warm. Refuses to sleep with the lights off. He will not go near windows when it's raining. He's bitten 3 orderlies and once tried to strangle a priest who offered to pray with him. Every time a storm rolls in, he breaks down completely, thrashing and drooling, clawing at the air like something's reaching for him through it. Sometimes he whispers, soft as dust, "It was under us the whole time, ... One orderly made the mistake of asking him what was under them. Rudy looked up with eyes like wet charcoal and said, "They carved the caves from inside the earth. Not with tools, with hunger. They sang them open. And now we hear them too." He started laughing, slow and wet, until his throat bled again. No one visits him anymore. The staff rotate out quickly. His doctor transferred after he woke up to find one of Rudy's drawings stapled to his ceiling, a picture of his own home with black suns orbiting it. No one knows how it got there. The security footage just goes black for 3 minutes that night, and when it comes back on, Rudy is asleep, smiling. The caves still aren't on any map. Not the satellite images, not the geological surveys. But sometimes, when the wind's low and the sky's red with sunset, hikers swear they see holes where the rock shouldn't be. Dark mouths breathing warm air. Places where compasses spin, and the birds refuse to fly overhead. There's no real end to the story, just like there's no real beginning. Only a warning, maybe, if you're ever near Palo Duro Canyon and you feel the urge to walk off the trail. If you hear humming in the stone, or think you see shapes moving in the shadows, don't follow them, because once you step into the mouth of the cave, it doesn't matter who you were. It only matters what you'll become. They said the old rail bridge out past Highway 59 was cursed. Not in the poetic, overused way people talk about haunted places, but with that low, weight-heavy hush that told you it wasn't something to joke about. It had no name anymore, no official listing on maps or GPS. Locals just called it the Old Bridge, like it was an unspoken scar nobody wanted to press on. It stretched across Caddo Creek, which in the summer got choked with reeds and mosquitoes, but in spring and fall, surged enough to swallow Deer Hole. The bridge was built in 1901 by the Southern and Western Line, back when Marshall was a proud hub of iron and coal. For decades it carried freight and passengers alike, families heading west, goods bound for the coast, oilmen, drifters, and the dying. Then it shut down, not all at once. First the traffic slowed, then someone died, then another. By 1984 there were no more trains. The steel rails were never torn out though. They just rusted, curled with time and disuse, coated in the red dust that blew in from the panhandle and clung like old blood. You could still walk it. Technically, the trestles hadn't crumbled, though they groaned in the wind and sagged in the center like a spine too long burdened. That was the draw, of course. Every dying town has its dare, its thing the kids whisper about behind gas stations and over beer cans. Walk the bridge, they'd say, at night. You'll hear it. The train. But it wasn't just talked out in 2022. Some jackass YouTuber from Dallas, 20-something, full of Red Bull and performative swagger, decided to film a live video called Ghost Train Challenge, midnight on Marshall's Death Bridge. The feed went live at 12:01 a.m. His name was Carter Mays, and he had just shy of 300,000 subscribers. Not huge, not famous, but enough that people watched. Enough that there were witnesses. For about 14 minutes, the live stream was what you'd expect. Carter cracking jokes, talking to the chat, shining a flashlight down the length of the rail line. It was foggy that night, not just misty, but dense. The way Texas fog sometimes rolls in thick and yellowed, like something exhaled from the ground. You could barely see the ends of the bridge on either side. The beams stretched into nothingness. Kept walking, reading messages out loud, laughing nervously. Come on, ghosts, give the people what they want. He shouted at one point, "Make it spooky, Marshall." At 14:19, the camera jolted. Not like he tripped, more like it was slapped or yanked. It spun once wildly and then showed the underside of the bridge, then a blur of wood, sky, and fog. Then it landed. It kept streaming. Carter didn't appear in the frame. You heard something, though. That's what everyone talked about. Rewatched, clipped, boosted the volume. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't even human. It was a whistle. Faint, high, long, the kind old locomotives used, but no train came. There were no vibrations, no headlights. Just fog. They found the phone on the rails the next morning, uncracked, still streaming. But no Carter. Marshall PD did a cursory search. Dogs, drones, volunteers. They scoured the creek bed for 2 days. Nothing. Then, late on the second night, a deputy named Thornwell, who later transferred to Amarillo and refused to talk about the bridge ever again, found something stuck to one of the lower support beams. Not below, but on the beam itself, 10 feet off the water, facing away from the path like something had clawed from the outside in 5 gouges. Deep, carved straight into the iron with a pressure no animal native to East Texas could manage. Not bear, not mountain lion, not man. That would have been the end of it, except for how the town responded. The bridge got quietly fenced off. Not city orders, just some crew in a truck with no logo. No one stopped them. Someone asked the mayor about it the following week, and she just blinked and said she didn't recall any permit filings, but that it was probably for the best. But that didn't stop the stories. It never does. They say the train still comes, some nights, but only for those who step on the tracks. You have to walk it. You have to tempt it. It's not about watching, it's about offering. And once you start, you can't stop. Turn around. And it gets faster. Step off, and the whistle comes. Not from ahead, from behind. Like it's already past you. There's one old man who swears he saw it when he was 12. In 1956. He told me the engine had no windows and the cars were all empty, not just of people, but of walls, as if the inside had been hollowed out, like someone had taken everything human out of them and left only the shell. It didn't make no sound, he told me, just that whistle and the smell, like burnt leather and old teeth. Another story came from a woman who swore her brother vanished on the bridge in '79. He was 16. She said he left a note saying he wanted to see if the stories were true. They never found him. She said that sometimes, and this is the part that stuck with me, sometimes, when she drives past the tree line near the water, she hears the peal sound of someone crying, not calling for help, not screaming, just weeping, like they forgot what it means to speak. I didn't believe it. I told myself it was legend, like Goatman's Bridge or the Lady of White Rock Lake, until I walked it. Myself? I shouldn't have. I know that now. I only made it 30 feet. I brought a flashlight. I brought a GoPro. I wore boots and packed a sidearm. I told myself I wasn't some thrill-chasing YouTuber. I was a journalist. I was documenting. That's different, right? It was quiet when I stepped onto the wood. Too quiet, not just still, vacuumed. Like the birds didn't dare. The air got thick, not cold. Just dense like syrup. The kind that settles in your ears and makes your thoughts feel muffled. My boots thudded too loud. Every sound echoed. Made it 10 steps before I heard something creak behind me. Not the bridge. Not the wind. A single deliberate footstep. I turned, but the fog was already curling over the rails. I saw nothing. I took one more step forward, heart racing. Then I heard the whistle. It didn't come from far ahead. It came from below, directly beneath me. Long, low, rising. I felt the beam tremble. Then the scratching started. underneath the boards, like claws. Like something dragging itself along the underside, matching my steps. The groan of steel, a rattle. Like chains. Then, the unmistakable slam of a coupler latching. I dropped the GoPro. I ran. I never made it to the tree line. I tripped halfway down the embankment and broke 2 ribs on a rock. Crawled to my car and didn't stop until I hit the gas station on Loop 390, crying, shaking, coughing blood. They called an ambulance. I told them I fell. I still dream about it, though. About the space under the bridge where something hides that isn't man or beast. Something that remembers the sound of wheels and hunger. Something that isn't just haunting the bridge, but using it. A door, maybe. Or a trap dot, and sometimes, just before I fall asleep, I swear I hear it again. That whistle, far away, and I wonder how far away it really is. They say it's a beautiful place, Bastrop State Park, full of pine trees, trails winding like arteries through the heart of central Texas, and that clean forest air that city folks romanticize. But if you ask the right people, the ones who work there long enough or live on the outskirts of Bastrop, they'll tell you to stay off the north side of the park, especially after dark. They don't write that part down on maps anymore. It's not fenced off, there's no sign. Just a gentle bend off one of the jogging trails, through a stretch of land where the forest burned black years ago in the 2011 wildfire. The trees still. Stand, skeletal and charred, but nothing sings there. No birds, no insects, no squirrels in the brush. Just silence, heavy and perfect. And a faint electric hum you feel behind your eyes like the inside of a power transformer. They call it the Silent Trail. People say it wasn't always there. Before the fire, there was just more forest. Nothing strange. Just more trees and more trails. But something changed after the burn. The soil shifted. The roots blackened. And then, sometime in the years after, the park rangers stopped mowing one of the access paths, stopped checking it altogether. And people forgot about it. Or tried to, until that jogger went missing. Her name was Natalie Ruiz, 32, lived in Austin. Came to Bastrop once a week for the quiet. Ran 6 miles every Saturday morning, religiously. She logged everything, calories, elevation, weather. She was the kind of person who set goals in a bullet journal and met every one of them. I know, because I used to run into her sometimes. I've got a cabin out near Alum Creek, just a few miles south of the park. I remember her always smiling, even when she was out of breath. Had this habit of waving at strangers like they were old friends. She went missing in March. That morning had started like any other. Clear skies, 50 degrees, soft mud underfoot from last night's rain. Her car was found in the trailhead lot just after noon. Her phone pins last at 9:04 a.m., then nothing. The only thing they found was her smartwatch, 4 days later. Not on the ground, not in the underbrush, but embedded inside a tree. Not strapped to a dot, not caught on a branch. Inside the bark dot, it was fused in, like the tree had grown around it overnight. The casing warped from pressure, the band stretched and brittle. They cut the tree down to get it out, and the whole trunk bled this thick, black sap that smelled like old pennies and bleach. It took a week to dry. The ranger who handled it, a guy named Wallace, quit the same day, didn't give notice. Just walked out of the park office, dropped his keys on the hood of his truck, and drove away. No one's heard from him since, but the strangest thing was the data. Natalie's watch kept, logging steps, for 4 days. Not in straight lines either. Not like someone was walking aimlessly. The movement mapped out tight circles, over and over. And over, right in the dead center of the burnt-out part of the park. No way anyone could have kept moving like that without food or water, let alone in that terrain. No footprints were ever found. No clothing. No bones. Just that damn watch, ticking out steps like it was counting something unseen. I wasn't involved in the investigation. I'm not a cop, not a ranger. I was just curious. Maybe too curious. See, years ago, before the fire, I worked construction. Helped maintain some of the outer buildings in the park, cabins, ranger outposts, maintenance sheds. I know the layout better than most. I also remember the fire and how it didn't burn evenly. Some parts were completely razed, ash down to bedrock. But that part, the part where Natalie vanished, it only scorched the trees. The ground was untouched. Like the fire didn't want to go there. So last month, I decided to go look. I waited for a foggy day, took a pack and my old trail boots, and set out early. Left my phone behind. Didn't want anything that could be tracked or listened in on. I know how that sounds paranoid, but once you've lived in these woods long enough, you understand that some things hear better than they see. I reached the blackened stretch just past mile marker 6. You have to leave the main trail and follow a narrow path that splits off behind a fallen pine. It doesn't look like much, just a gap in the woods. But if you step through it, you'll know. First, the sound dies. All of it. No wind. No birds. Not even the creak of branches. Just that low, vibrating hum. You don't hear it so much as feel it, deep in your molars and temples. It messes with your balance. Makes the world seem heavier, like gravity stronger there. I walked maybe a quarter mile before I saw the tree. It was still there. The one with the cut trunk. Even with the sap long dried, the bark still looked wrong, smooth in some places. Wrinkled in others, like it had tried to heal but didn't know how. The scar from where they'd pulled a watch was still visible, a puckered slit running diagonally across the wood. I kept going. I should have turned back then, but I didn't. I pressed deeper into the woods where the trees leaned too far in, like they were eavesdropping. The hum grew louder. My hands began to tingle. My boots felt heavy, like I was walking through syrup. I passed another tree, then another. And then I saw something that stopped me cold. A pair of running shoes. Just sitting there. Side by side. Laces still tied. Caked with mud, but not rotten. Like someone had just stepped out of them. I crouched down to touch one and realized the ground around them was soft, fresh. No other prints, no signs of an animal. Just the shoes, waiting. That's when I noticed the smell. Not rot, not mold. It was ozone. Like the air after a lightning strike. And beneath that, a sweetness. Artificial. Like something plastic was trying to smell like a flower. I turned around. And the trail was gone. I don't mean I missed a turn. I mean it wasn't there. The trees had shifted. The path behind me was solid brush and trunks, like it had never existed. Panic gripped me. I spun in circles, trying to orient myself, but every direction looked the same. Burnt pines. Black soil. That humming, now a sharp ringing behind my eyes. And then I heard footsteps, not mine. Soft. Measured. They didn't sound like a person. They were too deliberate. Like something trying to mimic walking without understanding it. They circled me. Once, then again. I couldn't see anything, just flickers between the trees. A shape, then nothing. A hand. Then bark. I didn't move, didn't breathe. It stopped. Silence returned. And then something whispered. Not in my ear. Inside my head. It said my name, once, quiet, clear. Then again, louder. And then the voice changed. Became mine. Like I was talking to myself from a mouth I didn't control. I see you. The pain hit then. A bolt behind my eyes, sharp enough to blind me. I collapsed. Don't know how long I was out. When I came to, I was lying on the park bench at the trailhead. Mud dried on my clothes. Blood on my tongue. No one saw me leave. No one heard me scream. It's been 3 days. I haven't slept. Every time I close my eyes, I see trees. Tall black, moving in ways trees aren't supposed to move. I hear the hum even through my walls. My ears bleed at night. I'm not the only one. I got a letter yesterday. No return address. Inside was a picture. It was Natalie, but not the way I remembered her. Her face was blurred, skin pale and slick. Eyes wrong, too many of them, clustered like seeds across her forehead. And behind her, half shadowed in the black woods, were more. All standing. Waiting. The letter had only one sentence written beneath the photo. You walked the trail. Now it walks you. Lake Livingston's Black Pool. There's a stretch of Lake Livingston the locals don't talk about after sundown. It lies past the cypress bend where the water thickens and the trees lean in like eavesdroppers. It's not marked on maps, not maimed in brochures or fishing guides. But everyone in the town of Onalaska, Texas, knows about it. They call it the Black Pool. They say the Black Pool isn't just deep, it's bottomless. Not metaphorically, but literally. Sonar bounces off it like a tennis ball off a slab of wet concrete. No reflections, no readings, just darkness. Flat and endless. You can be drifting along the lake in a canoe or fishing boat, and suddenly everything goes quiet. No frogs, no cicadas, no breeze. Then you look down and see it. The water turning from murky green to a pitch-black disk, round as a coin, swallowing the sky's reflection whole. It's not a part of the lake. It's something in it. The old-timers say it wasn't always there. According to Emery Baker, who runs the Rusting Bait Shack off Highway 190 and whose eyes are the pale blue of skimmed ice. The Black Pool showed up after a summer storm. Back in '62, one of those freak storms that make the sky green and flatten. Whole patches of forest like a god's boot came down on it. Emery was 16 then. He swears he saw something break the surface during that storm. Something round and wide, like the back of a sleeping whale. Only it didn't move like a creature. It was too slow, too deliberate, like it was choosing to rise. When the lightning cracked, he saw something slick and veined. Not skin, more like the surface of an eye. People wrote it off as swamp gas or a teenage lie. But after the storm passed, a 10-yard circle of the lake near the far bank turned black, not shadowy, not dirty. Black, as if the lake had been burned there. Fish stopped swimming near it. Birds avoided flying over it. And the water inside that circle, it didn't ripple. Not in the wind, not in the rain. A scuba team from Houston State University tried to explore it in 1987, hoping to disprove the rumors. They anchored just outside the pool and lowered 3 divers. Their tethers went slack after 10 feet. Then the lines began to tremble. A moment later, the winch operator screamed. The lines snapped one after another with a metallic whine. Not clean breaks, but shredded like they'd been chewed. When the team hauled the equipment back up, 2 of the wetsuits returned. Empty. Torn. The third never came back. Nor did the man inside it. The only survivor, Captain Reg Hawkins, swore under oath that something enormous brushed against the hull. Once from below, once along the port side. He described it like being tapped by a school bus moving slowly underwater. He sold his boat 6 weeks later and hasn't returned to the lake since. No one else has dared dive it. Even the fishers won't cast near it, as if their lures might pull up something they can't throw back. I didn't believe any of it. I'm a geologist by trade, specializing in lacustrine sinkholes and deep water anomalies. I've dived in old Russian lakes filled with methane vents and beneath collapsed salt domes in New Mexico. I've mapped extinct calderas in the Philippines and even taken samples from Lake Baikal in winter. Fear isn't part of the work. So when I first heard about the Black Pool through an old forum thread shared by a paranormal podcast guest, I brushed it off as another southern myth, but the sonar images they posted caught my attention, or rather, the lack of them. In all directions, the lake bottom was visible at about 38 feet, except for a round patch, nearly 50 yards wide, that reflected absolutely nothing. No readings, no echoes. Just null data. It wasn't a myth. It was a geological blind spot. That's what brought me there in October of last year. I brought my assistant Marlon, who had a military diving background and zero interest in ghost stories. We rented a small pontoon boat and launched from the north side at dawn, carefully following the GPS coordinates I'd extracted from the sonar overlay. Lake was calm, flat as polished stone. Birds flitted overhead. The only other boat was a bass angler trolling the west bank. We brought our gear on board: dry suits, oxygen tanks, a high-end sonar rig, submersible camera drones, and enough line to descend at least 300 feet. Well beyond the recorded depth of the lake. We reached the pool by mid-morning. The difference was immediate. The water below us darkened in a perfect circle, not brown or green like lake water, black. It looked wrong, artificial. The surface didn't shimmer. It didn't move at all, even though we were drifting. It was like glass stretched over a hole. Marlon muttered, "That's not normal." We ran the sonar. No return. I deployed the drone. It descended smoothly at first. Then, at about 12 feet down, the feed turned to static. It wasn't interference. The signal was clean, just blank. The drone didn't report depth, temperature, or resistance, like it had stopped existing. I pulled it back. Nothing on the tether. No weight. It didn't return. Marlon frowned and clipped on his rebreather. "I'm going down." I hesitated. "We should scan laterally first." But he was already in the water. He sank quickly. The line fed out at a steady pace. I watched the depth. Counter tick. 10 feet, 15, 20. Then the line stopped feeding. Not slowed, stopped mid-spool. The tension gauge spiked. I tried to pull it back, but it was rigid. Fixed. Then came the vibration. It felt like the boat was humming. Deep in the hull, like we'd strayed into the wake of a massive ship. But there was no movement on the surface. Just the soft hum growing, deeper, heavier. The kind of vibration you feel in your teeth. Then the line snapped. I screamed his name and dove in after him. The cold hit me first, colder than any lake water should be. A chill that burned through the suit like dry ice. I swam straight down, following the frayed tether. At 12 feet, everything vanished. I don't mean it went dark. I mean it disappeared. The water, the light, the pressure in my ears, gone. I wasn't swimming anymore. I was falling. Free falling. In silence. My limbs wouldn't respond. The pressure didn't increase. I wasn't even breathing. Didn't need to. I opened my eyes and there was nothing. No light, no depth. Only the sense that I was descending. Then I saw him, Marlon, floating about 20 yards below me, suspended like a marionette. His limbs were stiff. His face was locked in a scream, mouth open wide, but no sound came out. Something was behind him. Wrapped around him. It wasn't a creature. It didn't have eyes or limbs or a mouth. It was a presence. A shape made of anti-light, darker than the space around it. It looked like 100 thin tendrils radiating out from a core that pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. Every time it pulsed, I felt older, like it was taking something from me. I kicked toward him. Useless. I wasn't moving. I wasn't even in water anymore. I was just there, suspended, watching. Then it looked at me. No eyes, but I knew it saw me. I felt it press against my mind like fingers through clay. It didn't speak. It didn't need to. It showed me a hole, torn in the lake bed during that storm in '62. Not a crack in the earth, A crack in reality. A place not meant to exist. Something had slipped through. Something that lived in between. It wasn't alive like we understand it. It didn't feed. It absorbed time, thought, identity. It waited in the darkness for anything warm and real to drift close enough to take. I felt it brushing my thoughts, peeling them back like old wallpaper. My name, my childhood, my mother's face, and then I was rising. I don't remember swimming. I don't remember the surface. I only remember the sky slamming into me, the taste of air, and the sound of gulls screaming overhead. The boat was still there. The line was floating on the surface, frayed, like it had been gnawed. Marlon didn't come back. I left Texas that night. I didn't report anything. Didn't contact the university. I wiped the sonar logs. I told his family he drowned Dot, and sometimes, when I close my eyes, I feel the hum again. Deep. Patient Dot waiting Dot because something came back with me Dot and it hasn't stopped watching. Caddo Lake lies crouched in the armpit of East Texas like a secret the land doesn't want to share. The water there doesn't just sit still, it broods. Cypress trees stand waist-deep in murky brown, draped in Spanish moss like mourning veils. Their knotted roots reaching up from the mud like fingers grasping for something long lost. On most days, the lake is quiet, save for the drone of insects and the low groan of boats cutting through swamp channels. But when the fog rolls in, thick as cotton, heavy as dread, people say the lake changes. It forgets itself. Turns against the ones who dare drift into its ancient places. Locals whisper about something in the trees, something old, something watching. 3 weeks ago, the Parks family launched their aluminum boat from a rickety dock near the Louisiana border. Tommy Parks, his wife Diane, and their 2 kids, 10-year-old Wyatt and 6-year-old Emily, were just looking to escape the Dallas sprawl for the weekend. Tommy had always said he wanted his kids to learn how to fish, the real way like my daddy taught me, with cane poles and crickets. So they packed up their beat-up Suburban, drove 6 hours east, and rented a small cabin on the lake's northern fringe. It was supposed to be a peaceful Saturday. They had eggs and bacon that morning, black coffee steaming in paper cups, kids laughing and swatting mosquitoes. The fog crept in around 9, earlier than usual, the dock owner said. A thick, clinging mist that moved like it had intent. Tommy loaded the boat with gear anyway. Diane hesitated. Locals always said to avoid boating in heavy fog. Said the lake got strange when it couldn't see the sun. Tommy shrugged it off. That was the last time anyone saw them. Hours passed. That night, no calls, no sign. The game warden was alerted around midnight. By dawn, they found the boat drifting about a mile offshore. Engine silent, bait bucket half spilled, bobbers still floating on still water. The air was warm. The seat cushions, too. But no Parks family. Just footprints, too many to count. Some small, others larger than a man's boots. And scratched into the metal of the back seat with something jagged, maybe a knife, maybe just a rock, were 3 words. It's in the trees. That's when the stories started again. That old-timers remembered the Boudreaux boy from '88, vanished during a duck hunt with his uncle, just disappeared in the fog. They found his decoy bag floating, but the shotgun still strapped to his shoulder. The sling snapped like it had been yanked hard. Then there was Ms. Calhoun's dog that came back from the lake one morning with no eyes and a mouth full of leaves. She said it took 2 days before he stopped barking at the corners of her house and 3 before he wouldn't walk backward. I went down there myself, not as a believer, not at first. My cousin runs the bait shop near Mooring Sport. Told me he saw something in the fog a week after the Parks family vanished. Something tall, black, not moving right. Said it stood in the shallows behind the cypress line, motionless, until the wind shifted and the fog peeled back, and then it was just gone. No splash, no ripple, no sound, like it was never there, like it had only been watching. He looked sick when he told me this. Skin pale, jumpy, chain-smoking. Said it followed him home in the fog. Said he could hear it whispering in the trees. Outside his trailer, scratching the aluminum walls with fingers that sounded too long. He hadn't slept in 4 days. He put a Bible in every window. Nailed them shut. Nailed crosses to the trees. I slept in the shop that night, back room behind the shelves of tackle and beer coolers. I wanted to believe he was just tired, maybe drunk, maybe cracked from the stress. But around 3 a.m., I woke up freezing. The kind of cold that didn't make sense for June. A wet, bone-deep chill. The fog had seeped in somehow, through vents, cracks, maybe the floorboards. It hung low like it was crawling on its belly. I could smell the lake in it, rot, wet bark. Something else. Something metallic. And then, faintly, from behind the back door, I heard something shuffle. Not walk. Shuffle. Like dragging something heavy. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I just listened. The shuffle stopped right outside the door. Then came a soft tapping. Not urgent, not hard. Just tap, tap. Tap, like it was waiting. Like it knew I was in there. Then I heard it speak. Not in English. Not in any language I know. Just low syllables, deep and wet like they came from underwater. And even though I didn't know the words, I understood the intent. Come out. Come see. I stayed in that shop until the sun came up, gun on my lap, cross in hand. The fog was gone by morning. Everything smelled normal again. My cousin? Gone. Door wide open. No blood, no mess, no note. Just his boots by the threshold, soaked, muddy, and still warm. I've been back twice since. Once with a camera crew from Dallas. Once with a local preacher who swore the land was cursed. The crew. Bailed after one of them got sick in the fog. Said he heard a woman's voice calling him by name from the trees. The preacher? He didn't make it to the boat ramp. Collapsed by the cypress grove, eyes wide, mouth foaming. They say it was a stroke. But I saw the way he kept whispering something with his dying breath. Over and over again. Just one word. Climbing. I think he meant it's not just in the trees anymore. It's above them. Watching from higher up. Waiting for the fog to get thick enough to reach down again. They'll keep sending people. Hunters. Fishermen. Curious. Kids with flashlights and YouTube channels. Most of them won't make it deep enough to matter. But the ones who do, the ones who stay quiet, who turn their motors off and just listen, they'll hear it too, in the rustle of moss, in the shivering branches, in the silence between bullfrog croaks. And then the fog will move, and the trees will seem taller than before, and maybe, just maybe, they'll understand the message carved into the parks. Family's boat, it is in the trees. But by then, it's too late. It's already coming down. They say if you drive FM 666 late enough, past the oil field signs and dying mesquite trees, the land gets quiet in a way that ain't right. No crickets, no coyotes. Just you, your tires on dry asphalt, and a stretch of Texas blacktop that feels like it leads nowhere. And maybe it does. FM 666 cuts through a hard patch of South Texas between Corpus Christi and Alice, straight through scrubland that hasn't seen rain in months. The kind of place where cell service dies without warning and vultures line the fences like sentries. The road was laid out in the 40s, cracked and tar-blistered now, forgotten by Google Maps and too narrow for semis. But some still take it. They don't all make it back. There's a house out there. No address, no mailbox, no power lines. The fence around it is barely standing, slats warped like they've been through 100 summers without a drop of water. But the porch light? It's always on. They call it the Harper place, though no one remembers a Harper living there. Some say it was built before the war, maybe as far back as 1910. Records are gone, wiped. Like the county wanted to forget it existed. People don't talk about the house unless you're local. And even then, it's only after dark and only after a few drinks. They say the place watches you. They say it breathes. They say if you get too close, it pulls you in. Most of that could be dismissed. Urban legend stuff. But then came the boy from Corpus. TikTok challenge, of course. He was just a kid, 17. Raymond Ortiz. Skinny, braces, mop of black curls under a beanie. He had a following, 500,000 views on some prank he pulled in a HEB parking lot. That's what kids are into now? Trespassing, ghost hunting, fake screams. He went out there alone just after midnight. Streamed the whole drive. The first 20 minutes were boring. Him vaping, making dumb jokes, talking about the demon house on 666. Then he started getting jittery. Said the signal bars on his phone were flickering, even though he had full service 2 minutes earlier. The road narrowed. Weeds started brushing the sides of his bumper. He made some joke about how the trees looked like hands reaching up from the dirt. Then he went quiet. People said he saw it before the camera picked it up the house. Like it appeared before him without warning. The video's still online, though it gets taken down a lot. Copies pop up on horror forums. You see the headlights catch it just for a second. An old farmhouse, slanted porch, warped siding like melted wax. And that porch light glowing this sick sulfur yellow. Riemann gets out, shaky voice, trying to sound brave. "Let's go see the devil's Airbnb," he says. Laughs, but it's dry. Forced. He walks toward the porch. That's when the stream starts to glitch. Not the usual freeze-frame kind, either. The footage jumps, jerks like old film, and the audio, it buzzes. Not static, not wind. A low hum, rhythmic, like breathing run through a filter. Then he screams. The camera falls. You don't see him again, but the stream keeps going. 7 hours. Just that porch, that light, and this shifting, pulsing sound under the static, like something moving just out of frame. People swear they hear things if they listen long enough. Words, wet footsteps. Knuckles tapping wood. Cops went out there, of course. County sheriff, a few deputies, even a guy from DPS. They found his car on the side of FM 666, door wide open, keys still in the ignition. The house wasn't there. Not even a foundation. Just brush and dirt and the creak of distant oil pumps. The weirdest thing? Every single one of their body cams drained dead within minutes. The batteries didn't die. The footage was erased, but one thing stayed. The scream. That audio has been pulled from the stream, filtered, cleaned, enhanced. No one knows how it's still online. It pops back up no matter how often it gets taken down. You can find it if you look. And if you really listen, deep underneath his screaming, there's a whisper, a woman's voice. She says, "Come home." No one knows who she is. My name's Eli Graves. I used to work for the county, assistant surveyor. My job was to map unincorporated plots, update floodplain data, and make sure the fire roads were where they were supposed to be. Dry work, mostly. But in 2019, I got assigned a weird patch of land outside Bankhead, right near FM 666. They wanted to clear the paperwork for some oil access. I was given coordinates. There was no house listed in the files, just a note from the 70s. Do not disturb. I ignored it. Figured it was a joke. I drove out there just before sundown, figured I'd log the land and be home by dark. I took my company truck, a clipboard, and one of those rolling distance wheels. My GPS died halfway in. Just cut off. Not even a signal loss, it crashed. Went black. The air out there, it's thick. Not just hot, but heavy. Like breathing through burlap. The sun was setting behind the mesquites, long shadows dragging across the ground like something crawling. And then I saw it. The house was there, just sitting. No tire tracks, no fence break. It hadn't been there 5 minutes before. But there it was, pale wood lit by the dying sun, porch slanted like a grin. That light was already on. Faint yellow, but steady. I felt it in my jaw, this pressure. Not pain, exactly. More like a hum inside my teeth. I should have left. Should have taken one look and called it in. But something tugged at me. Not curiosity, not fear. Something deeper. I walked toward it. Every step made the air feel heavier. The trees were still. Not a single leaf moved. And that light, it flickered. Not like it was broken, but like it was blinking at me. Then the door opened. Just a crack. The smell that hit me. It wasn't rot. It was something worse, like scorched meat and lavender. Sweet and burning. I heard movement, floorboards inside, something dragging. I called out, "Anyone there?" Then I heard her, "Come home," soft, not distant. Right behind me, I turned. Nothing. When I looked back, the house was gone. Just scrubland again. Sunset bleeding into twilight. And me standing alone with my boots in dirt that hadn't been disturbed in years. I quit the next week. That place shows up when it wants to. And it knows you once you've seen it. I still get phone calls from unknown numbers. When I answer, there's no voice. Just static. And sometimes, breathing. Last night, I drove past FM 666 just before midnight. I saw a glow out in the fields. Yellow. Pale. I didn't stop. I kept driving. But in the rear view, I saw the house again, clear as anything. And on the porch, someone was standing there. A boy, wearing a beanie, smiling, mouth wide open like he was still screaming, but no sound was coming out. The light above him blinked once, then everything went dark. The Devil's Sinkhole is a name that feels too on the nose, like something cooked up by ghost tour operators or B-movie directors, but it's real. 30 minutes northeast of Rock Springs, carved into the hot limestone like a wound that never. Scabbed over, it sits in the middle of scrubland and mesquite, surrounded by fences no one maintains anymore. Technically, it's protected state-owned. Used to be part of a nature preserve back when people still gave a damn. Tour groups came. Through now and then, binoculars dangling from their necks like trophies, smiling about the bat colonies that poured out at dusk like smoke from hell. But the real reason no one goes anymore, no matter what the brochures say, has less to do with the bats and more to do with the silence that falls when you get too close. I went there in late July of 2019. I was writing a book about forgotten places in Texas backroad Americana, vanished diners, ghost towns swallowed by brush. The sinkhole was a detour, an afterthought, a bullet point in a guidebook that had yellowed with time. I remember the road. There was mostly gravel and goat trails winding through ranchland so dry the dirt cracked like scales. The sun pressed down on everything, heavy as a migraine. I didn't expect anything weird. I wasn't chasing legends. I had a Nikon, a few notebooks, and a sense of curiosity. But when I stepped out of the rental car and made my way to the fenced overlook, the first thing I noticed wasn't the view, it was the sound. Or the lack of it. No insects, no birds, not even the wind. The air just stopped, like someone had pressed pause. The hole itself was a jagged black mouth, 40 feet across at the lip, widening underground into a chamber almost 100 feet wide and 400 feet deep. It felt alive, not metaphorically. I mean, it felt like it breathed. Hot air rose in strange gusts, not steady like heat from pavement, but pulsing, rhythmic. I crouched by the edge, gripped the steel railing, and stared down until the pupils of my eyes felt like they were stretching towards something I couldn't. See. Then came the smell. It hit like a wave sulfur, but not quite. More like something rotted and scorched, like meat left on a fire too long. I backed away, mouth dry, stomach twitching, and decided I'd seen enough. I took one photo. Just one. I didn't even look at it until that night in the motel room. And when I did, I saw something I hadn't noticed. A blur of red down near the base, like the smear of a flare or blood, reflecting light that wasn't there. That's when I started digging into what happened to Ranger Clay Harbinger. It wasn't easy. The state had buried the incident under a pile of bureaucratic sludge, equipment failure, unverified testimony, reassessment pending. But the first found his sister Lena in San Angelo. She hadn't spoken to media in years, and when she opened her door and saw the recorder in my hand, she almost shut it in my face. I told her I wasn't a reporter. I told her I just wanted to know what really happened. She made me leave my phone outside. Told me not to repeat her words anywhere official. Clay was strong, she said, sitting at her kitchen table, staring into a cup of cold coffee. Marine, survival trained. Didn't scare easy. But when he came back from that site the week before his final descent, he was shaken. Said the bats weren't coming out right. Said he'd heard something down there. Breathing. She paused. Swallowed. He didn't mean animals. He said it sounded huge, like it was buried under the rock too big to rise. And he started sleepwalking, mumbling, talking about the teeth in the dark. Said they moved when he looked away. According to the report, Clay went down with a harness, a camera strapped to his chest, and a cum unit. He made it 300 feet. The last thing he said before the rope jerked was, "Something's breathing down here." Then the radio went silent. When they pulled the rope back up, it was blackened. Not frayed, not torn burnt. The climbing harness was scorched like it had been passed through a furnace. The camera housing was melted, warped, and fused to the plastic. They never found his body. The official story said it was an accident. Gas pocket ignition, equipment failure. But Lena told me something else. They didn't tell you what the coroner found when they inspected the rope, did they? She asked. Voice low. Tiny bone fragments embedded in the melt, like teeth had been chewing through it as it burned. I didn't sleep that night. A few weeks later, I heard from a guy named Dave Selman, a spelunker out of Austin. Said he'd gone down the sinkhole years ago, before it was restricted. He didn't go all the way, but far enough to remember what he called the pressure. It was like the deeper you went, the heavier your own thoughts got, he told me. Like it was crawling in your head, making you feel things you didn't think were yours. I had nightmares for weeks. Felt watched. My girlfriend said I started talking in my sleep, saying names in a language she didn't know. I asked if he remembered any of the words. He didn't, but later he emailed me a voice memo he'd recorded from one of his dreams. The audio was staticky, muffled, but behind the distortion, I could make out a whispering hum, layered with deep inhalations like a creature taking long, patient breaths, then a voice, low, crackling, not quite human. Return. Just that. One word. He told me he'd deleted the file a dozen times. Said it always came back. I stopped writing the book. I didn't go near Rock Springs again, but I kept tabs on the sinkhole. Every year, a few people still tried to explore it. Some tourists, some thrill seekers. One YouTuber went live during a nighttime drone drop. He made jokes at first, laughed about finding Satan's butthole, but the drone feed cut out at 237 feet. When it came back, the camera was flipped upside down. There were scratches on the lens. The sound feed picked up something else, two breathing again, but this time faster, more eager. like something pacing below the surface. You can still find the video if you dig, though YouTube removed the original. What freaked people out wasn't the footage, it was the final few frames, when the camera glitched and zoomed into a patch of stone near the wall. If you freeze it just right, you'll see something impossible. A human face, pale and sunken, embedded in the rock. Mouth open like it was screaming when the stone swallowed it. Some say the devil's sinkhole isn't a cave. It's a throat. A mouth to something older than words, something buried before Texas had a name. And it's still breathing, waiting to be fed again. Somewhere west of Austin and south of Llano, in that twisted patch of Texas hill country where the cedar trees crowd close and the roads roll like the backs of sleeping beasts, there's a house the locals don't talk about unless they're drinking. Not because they're afraid, though they are, but because saying too much about it is like giving it directions. Like the thing might hear you. The stories say it moves, not just changes appearance or shifts with the light like a mirage. It moves, walks, turns. Sometimes it leans down, like it's trying to hear you back. You don't find it on a map, and no one's entirely sure which county it calls home, if it even has one. Blanco? Gillespie? Maybe Burnett. It doesn't matter. The place finds you, not the other way around. Ask any rancher over the age of 60, and they'll tell you about a cousin or an uncle or a friend of a friend who swore they saw it sitting in a meadow that shouldn't have been there, or crouched behind a line of trees like a predator hiding in the brush. One woman, a realtor out of Fredericksburg, claimed she got a listing for it back in 2017. Said it just popped up on MLS with no contact info, just coordinates. She hired a drone guy out of Austin to get aerial footage. He made it as far as the Blanco-Kendall County line before calling her, voice shaking. Told her he got it on camera. She didn't believe him until she saw the raw footage. It showed a plain house, maybe early 1900s construction. Clapboard siding, front porch with rotting railings, chimney that bent slightly to the left. Just an old country home, nothing special. But in the footage, it wasn't still. Frame by frame, it turned. Not rotated, turned like a person would. Twisting from the waist. The porch creaked and tilted with the weight. One frame showed a window pulling into a squint, the glass warping into something like an eyelid. Another showed the entire house leaning forward as if trying to look down. At the drone. Then the feed cut out. The operator, guy named Benton Reeves, never touched another drone after that. Moved to Ohio, started working at a tire shop. Told people he was done with machines that fly. The realtor? She vanished 2 weeks later. Her car was found halfway between Luckenbach and Sisterdale, parked at an odd angle near a dry creek bed. The doors were unlocked, keys still in the ignition. Her shoes were 30 feet from the car, placed side by side in the dirt like someone took them off neatly before walking away, barefoot. That was the first time it made the news. Briefly. A paragraph in the Fredericksburg Standard, buried between a cattle auction report and a column about pecan blight. They called it a mystery. Out here. We know better. I saw it myself once. Back in '03, I'd taken my truck out to scout some old deer leases north of Pipe Creek. Drove a mile off a caliche. Rode past a fence that had half collapsed into the scrub. Didn't think much of it at first, just a patch of forgotten ranchland, the kind you see all over Texas. But then I saw the chimney over the trees. The house was just there, squatting in a dry field, no road leading up to it, no path carved. Through the mesquite, the ground was undisturbed. No tire tracks, no prints. Like the whole goddamn thing had landed. I didn't get out, didn't even roll down the window. I just stared. Something about it. It felt aware. Like it wasn't a house at all, just something pretending. I backed the truck out as fast as I could without blowing a tire on the rocks. Didn't stop driving until I hit Bandera proper. Bought a six-pack and didn't sleep that night. I tried to forget about it. Swore it was a heat mirage, maybe a leftover set piece from a movie or something. But I knew better. Then came the hitchhiker. That was 2011. Teenage girl, early 20s maybe. Picked up off FM 165 by a couple heading to Wimberley. She was barefoot, dress torn, shaking so bad she couldn't hold the water bottle they gave her. All she said at first was, "The house, it moves." Took her days to start talking in full sentences. She said she'd gone camping with her boyfriend near Canyon Lake. They took a wrong turn, ended up lost on some back road she couldn't name. Spent the night in the car. Woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of something dragging metal across asphalt. Said they saw a light in the woods. Not like a flashlight or a fire. Something white blue, pulsing, almost like a heartbeat. Her boyfriend, Mark, I think wanted to check it out. They found the house about a mile in. She said it didn't look old up close. Said it looked new, like it had just been born. The woods smelled like fresh sap and wet soil, but the windows were wrong. Too tall, too narrow. The roof slanted backward, sharp and strange, like a folded wing. They heard music inside. A phonograph. Maybe. Something scratchy and slow. Mark opened the door. She tried to stop him. He laughed and said, "It's just a house." He went in. She didn't. She never saw him again. "Not really," said the house grew, right there in front of her, bulging and expanding like something breathing through wet lungs. The porch stretched forward. The door widened like a mouth. She saw shadows moving inside, but not Mark's. Too many legs. Too many angles. She ran. Didn't remember how she got back to the road. Just remembered the sound it made when it moved like tree roots breaking through rock and wood splintering underwater. The sheriff's office never found Mark. Hell, they never found the house. They stopped looking after a week. Now here's the part I hate to tell. I think it's coming closer. The sightings used to be scattered. Once every few years. Now they're happening monthly. A man in Marble Falls swore he saw it in his rearview mirror while leaving a gas station. A rancher in Johnson City found the fence behind his property bent in the exact outline of a front porch 12 feet wide, 6 feet deep. No tracks, no debris. Just a bent fence and a pile of dirt shaped like boot prints. People say it's growing bolder, smarter, testing the edges of towns. Learning the names of roads. The thing is, I don't think it wants to be seen. I think it has to be. I think seeing it feeds it, gives it shape. Maybe that's why I'm writing this. Maybe I'm already making it stronger. Last night I heard footsteps on my roof. Not heavy, like a man's. Slow and creaking. Like boards shifting under nails. I live alone. I don't have an attic. This morning I found a splinter of wood in my bed. Old, weathered, painted white. Smelled like cedar and blood. I think the house is looking for a place to stop. Maybe a neighborhood this time. Maybe your street. Maybe. It's already here. They say the Rio Grande breathes in the summer, exhaling heat so thick it clings to your lungs like oil. The river cuts through the desert like a wound, brown and swollen, full of secrets it doesn't care to share. Along the Texas border, near Presidio, the land is hard and mean. The heat doesn't just bake you, it breaks you. Ranchers tell stories of men who wander too far and never come back. Of shapes seen at dusk that vanish when the light fades completely. Most folks chalk it up to cartel activity or bad luck. But the old-timers, they remember the tunnels. Back in the 1930s, Prohibition made smugglers rich. Whiskey and opium weren't the only cargo slipping through the southern border. Men and women. Weapons, things no one ever cataloged. The smugglers carved a honeycomb of crude tunnels under the Rio Grande, stretching for miles beneath the desert floor. They say some ran from Presidio to the outskirts of Ojinaga, others deeper, older even than the Spanish missions, with stonework that didn't match anything Mexican or American. Over time, they were abandoned. Many collapsed, some sealed by the Border Patrol. But the ground doesn't forget. Neither did the things buried beneath it. Last July, 5 local thrill seekers decided to find one of the collapsed entrances. College kids mostly, bored and half-drunk on mezcal, chasing TikToks and ghost stories. They'd heard of a breach in one of the old culverts near Shafter, just a few miles north. There'd been a flash flood the month before. Washed out the mouth of an arroyo and revealed part of a tunnel, cracked wide, slumped inward like a jaw trying to speak. The boys packed headlamps, GoPros, and a week's worth of bad decisions. Only one came back. His name was Eli Mendoza, 22, El Paso native. Not a bad kid, just hungry for something bigger than himself. They found him wandering the road near Redford 2 days after they'd gone in. Shirtless, caked in mud, eyes blank as desert stone. His fingernails were gone, pulled off. He was gripping something in his fist, a soup spoon. Blood dulled. The cops said it took 3 officers to pry it from his hand. That's when they noticed what he'd done with it. He'd gouged his ears out, not just torn them or cut the lobes. He'd dug, scooped deep, all the way into the canals. The ED doc threw up after seeing it. No one could explain how he stayed conscious long enough to finish the job. The only thing Eli said before he passed out was this: "They call your name until you answer." The authorities wrote it off as trauma-induced psychosis. The other 4 were never found. Not a trace. The tunnel collapsed again 2 days later. During a minor quake no one felt, like the earth sealed itself shut. I didn't believe it, not at first. I was a reporter for a regional paper out of Del Rio. We got a tip about Eli, saw the story, did a piece. That should have been the end of it, but something stuck with me. A detail no one else printed. The sheriff mentioned offhand that Eli had said something walks without footsteps. That phrase stuck in my brain like a thorn. Something about it didn't sit right. So I started digging old border maps, smuggler records. Found a retired agent who used to monitor the Rio tunnels back in the 70s. He told me there were places down there the dogs refused to enter. Places where radio signals went dead, where men came up shaking and silent. He said once, only once. They opened an older section that hadn't been touched in decades. The concrete was dry, but the walls were slick with condensation. No ventilation, no source, just wet. And carved into the limestone names, hundreds of names. Some in English, others in Spanish, others in scripts he couldn't recognize. He quit the next week, so I went. Alone, rented a Jeep, brought 2 flashlights, water, and a handheld recorder. I told myself I'd only go as far as the breach, just look, not enter. Curiosity's a funny thing, soft at first, then loud. I reached the arroyo before dusk. The sky was red and bleeding into purple, and the air smelled like rust and ozone. The tunnel was there, just like in the reports, half collapsed, choked with vines. Cool air breathed out from it, impossibly cold for July. I stepped in 10 feet, then 20, then 50. My light caught the curve of the walls, old stonework beneath the modern supports, pitted and ancient. Strange symbols etched every few feet, not art, not graffiti. More like warnings. I don't know when I started hearing the voices. At first it was like wind through pipes, then murmurs, then distinct syllables. They were saying my name, softly, repeatedly, from ahead, from behind, From within the stone itself, I turned off my recorder, sat down, tried to breathe. The air grew thick, wet. It began to smell like old blood and river silt. My flashlight flickered, and in that strobing dark, I saw movement, not a figure. Not really. More like a displacement. Like the space itself was bending, stretching, as if something was walking, but not using legs. No sound, no weight. But the walls trembled. It moved toward me. I backed out, fast. Tripped once, sliced my palm on the stone. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. I climbed out of the tunnel and into the heat of the night, gasping, shaking. I never went back, but something did. That night in my motel, the lights buzzed nonstop. The water in the sink ran red for a second before clearing. I woke up to scratches on my window, second story. And worst of all, at 3:12 a.m., I heard my name, spoken not from the hall, not from the street. From inside the walls. It hasn't stopped. I moved cities, changed phones, threw the recorder in a river. But at night, when things get quiet, really quiet, I hear it again. A whisper. Calling my name. And I know now why Eli did what he did, because the voices don't stop. They just wait. They speak softly. They learn your name. They wear it, like a key. And when they're sure you're listening, they come through. There's something under the Rio Grande, older than the smugglers, older than the tunnels. It calls out from the cracks in the stone, from the forgotten spaces beneath. The dirt, it waits for ears. It waits for names. And when it knows you're listening, it walks without footsteps. The desert around Terlingua holds heat the way a dying man holds a secret, tight, desperate, and long past reason. The land there isn't flat like the northern plains or rolling like the hill country. It's jagged and harsh, broken by canyons that look torn into the earth by something angry. The sun burns but doesn't bleach it. The wind scours but doesn't clean. Everything about that stretch of the Chihuahuan Desert feels like it's been punished. And yet, people go there. Artists, drifters, people trying to escape things behind them and others trying to find something they can't quite name. Terlingua itself is barely a town, just a scattering of adobe, trailers, and dreams gone brittle under the weight of sun and silence. There's a place just west of town, past the gravel service roads and forgotten mine trails, where the land dips into a shallow gorge. Locals call it the Screaming Cliffs. Not officially, it's not on the maps or park pamphlets, but everyone knows what you mean when you ask. And if you ask, they'll stare at you too long before saying anything. Some will pretend not to have heard. Others will give a simple answer that ends the conversation. Don't go there. But of course, people do. The story starts in the usual way, with a group of out-of-towners who didn't believe in stories. They called themselves Southwest Specters, a YouTube ghost hunting crew that had built a modest following online chasing myths across New Mexico and Arizona. Their formula was simple. Find a creepy local legend, camp overnight, film everything, and stir the pot just enough to goose a few thousand views. It was mostly smoke and mirrors, night vision tricks, weird sound edits. The leader of the group, a tall guy named Jared Wolf, knew it was all bullshit. But clicks were clicks, and Terlingua's Screaming Cliffs sounded like gold. They arrived 2 days before the full moon. The four of them rented a house near Study Butte, made the rounds at the local dive, asked the right kinds of questions. Bartenders laughed them off. One old woman spat on the floor when they asked about the cliffs. A grizzled man in a sun-bleached Stetson told them the screaming only came at night, and that the cliffs were hungry for people who don't listen. He said it in a voice so low they had to lean in to hear. Then he walked out without another word. That sealed it for Jared. The team packed light, tents, Drones, night vision, motion sensors, a couple GoPros, EMF meters, shotgun mics, and a thermal camera they didn't really know how to use. They filmed their hike in like a proper intro. Lots of wide desert shots, corny narration, fake spookiness. It was all routine. They set up camp on a shelf of rock overlooking the mouth of the gorge. The cliffs weren't high, maybe 60 feet, but the walls were sheer and jagged, like something had raked its claws down both sides of the canyon. The rock had a reddish-black hue, and in some places it shimmered faintly, not like mineral sparkle, but like heat. But the thermal camera didn't pick anything up. Just rock. Cole. Jared did a walk-and-talk vlog bit at sunset, sitting on the edge of the cliff. Some say the screams started after the mine collapse in 1912. Others blame the burial sites of ancient tribes disturbed by oil surveyors in the 60s, but none of that's been proven. Tonight, we're going to find out for ourselves what's really going on out here. He winked at the camera. They lit a fire, cooked some dehydrated chili, passed around cheap beer. Standard ghost hunting preamble. At 9:30, the wind picked up. No clouds, just a rising hum in the air like pressure building. Behind a wall. The first sound came at 10:17 p.m. It wasn't a scream at first. More like breathing, shallow, wrong, not quite animal, not quite human. The kind of sound you make when your chest is crushed but you're still alive. Then the moaning started. A long, drawn-out cry that stretched across the canyon like it was coming from under the ground. The cliffs reverberated with it, turning it into a chorus. The gear picked it all up, clear as day. Jared whispered into his mic, "You hearing this?" One of the others, maybe Chris, the audio guy, muttered, "It's coming from below." At 11:02, the voices began. Not wails, not cries, voices, talking, disjointed, layered, male, female, old, young, words twisted by the rock, as if filtered through bone and earth and time. Some of the voices repeated themselves. Some seemed to argue. One of the recorders caught a woman saying, "We told you not to come," in perfect clarity, like she was standing right behind the mic, but no one was. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in 5 minutes. The fire guttered for no reason then, flared high enough to scorch one of the tents. The camera footage showed no wind, no cause. Then the screaming started in earnest. It came all at once, hundreds of them. It seemed anguished, animalistic. Some sobbing, some howling, some whispering. No, 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 over and over. The cliffs vibrated. One of the cameras fell and cracked its lens. The team tried to pack up. One of them ran toward the trail and vanished from the drone's thermal feed mid-step. Gone. No heat trace. No footprints. Just gone. The others followed soon after, one by one, not dragged, not pulled. Taken, the last frame caught by the stationary. Camera shows Jared standing at the edge of the cliff, blood running from his ears, staring down into the canyon. His mouth moved, but no sound came out. He dropped to his knees, looked up, then the feed cut. Their car was found the next morning by rangers on patrol, parked haphazardly, keys in the ignition. Camp was found that afternoon, gear scattered. Number. Bodies. No signs of struggle, but everything had been burned. Not by fire, not charred, but melted. Like the plastic and metal had been cooked from the inside out. The SD cards somehow survived. When law enforcement reviewed the footage, the screaming continued after the team was gone. 4 hours. Then, just before dawn, a new voice joined. A fifth voice, male, hoarse, familiar. Jared. He said, "It's not cliffs. It's under them. It's alive. It remembers. And it hates." Then silence for a full 20 minutes. Then a whisper, We told you not to come." The case was closed as a missing persons file. Locals say the sheriff's office has a locked drawer with the original footage, and that sometimes, on certain nights, when the full moon's out and the wind dies down, the desert echoes with a scream that sounds like it was born long before. Men walk the earth that something waits beneath the screaming cliffs of Terlingua, and it never forgets. It was supposed to be the future. The city had ambitions, real ones, compete with Chicago, surpass St. Louis, a subway line that would run east to west, deep beneath the streets of downtown, linking the mercantile district to the growing neighborhoods of Oak Cliff. They called it the Interurban Spine Project. 6 tunnels were planned. 5 were partially dug. One, Tunnel 6, was never officially begun. That's the story, at least. The official record stops at Tunnel 5 beneath Main Street, which was sealed in '39 after a cave-in killed 2 workers. Funding dried up, politics got messy, and the whole project was quietly abandoned. Most people forgot about it. You won't find a single public blueprint past Tunnel 5, but people who work beneath the city, maintenance crews, sewer teams, transit planners, they know better. Tunnel 6 is real, and they don't go near it, somewhere down below. Dealey Plaza, where the layers of old Dallas stack like sediment, Confederate brick, Prohibition concrete, Cold War steel, the entrance waits. It's not marked. It's not lit, but it's there. The first confirmed case that made the news was in 1998. A man named Jarrett Poe, local freelance photographer, ran a blog where he posted long, meandering urban exploration videos crawling through storm drains, condemned factories, shuttered power stations. Real underground stuff, the grainy camcorder kind. His last video showed him entering a maintenance tunnel off a parking garage near Commerce Street. It wasn't labeled. He said he'd found something strange, a door with no lock, no hinges, and old red paint flaking off it like blood. He said he thought it was the rumored Tunnel 6. He never uploaded what he found inside, just static. Then the footage cut to him, days later, on the street, barefoot and wild-eyed, screaming in what sounded like German. When they picked him up, he was gray-haired, face gaunt and sunburnt, voice hoarse from screaming. He was 31. Looked 60. He died 3 days later in the county hospital. Stroke toxicology showed nothing unusual. No drugs, no trauma. His brain had just quit. Autopsy photos showed calcified arteries more in line with an 85-year-old man. The press said heat stroke. A few conspiracy forums said time dilation. One comment said, "He's lucky he came back at all." That was the beginning of the obsession by the 2010s. Tunnel 6 had become something of a legend among explorers, a lost place, a portal. The way people talked about it, you could almost believe it was alive. There were stories. Always stories. One kid, 17, maybe 18, showed up on a Dallas subreddit, claiming he found the tunnel in a storm runoff chamber west of the Trinity River, posted a map and a screenshot, said he was going in that Friday. He didn't. Post again. But 2 months later, a maintenance worker reported a naked, young man curled in the corner of an electrical substation near Bishop Arts. He was catatonic. When they brought him in, doctors said he was severely dehydrated, anemic, covered in soot. He had lesions on his feet like he'd been walking on hot stone for days. They found strange scars on his arms, tiny circular brands, like ring-shaped burns. He wouldn't speak, but he would hum, under his breath, a strange lullaby no one could identify. It wasn't until later that a visiting linguist traced the melody to a Civil War-era hymn popular among Confederate soldiers. It hadn't been heard in over 100 years, and it wasn't the last time. A small group, Went missing in 2017. 3 people from Austin, experienced explorers. 1 came back. Lisa Caldwell. She refused to speak about what happened underground, only that they'd found a section that didn't make sense. A corridor that turned back on itself. A place where sound echoed before you made it. She said her 2 friends had walked ahead, then were just gone. Not lost, but removed like they had been erased mid-step. She emerged 4 hours later, filthy, bleeding from her ears, whispering a phrase in what sounded like Old English. The pale ones guard the old mouth. Doctors chalked it up to psychosis. She was institutionalized in Fort Worth. Still is, as far as anyone knows. Despite it all, people kept going. Some claimed Tunnel 6 was just an old, unmapped line that got buried in the archives. But others said it wasn't human-made. That it had been found, not dug. That whatever crew first opened it up in the 30s had closed it fast because something in there didn't want to be seen. Few claimed that the tunnel predates Dallas. That native tribes wouldn't settle near the site. That Mexican soldiers in the 1800s wrote of a cold mouth in the earth, where the wind smells like iron and blood. There's no evidence for that, of course. But the stories lingered. I found it by accident. I wasn't looking for Tunnel 6. I was down in a storm runoff canal near the Commerce Underpass, shooting footage for a documentary on urban neglect. A friend had told me about the network down there, how the system gets overwhelmed every few years, and the city pretends to be surprised. There was a side shaft, just past a pile of rusted rebar. The air coming from it was cold, wrong cold. Not the damp, mildewy chill of underground spaces, but sharp, metallic cold. Like you feel in a freezer that's just been opened. It scraped my skin. And the smell, it was like whetstone and copper wiring. Familiar, but not. I went in. At first, it looked like any forgotten maintenance tunnel. Wires cut, water pooled in ankle-deep hollows, old bulbs swinging from the ceiling. But the deeper I went, the less it resembled anything I'd ever seen in infrastructure. The walls stopped being concrete. They looked carved. Not with tools, with pressure. Like something had pushed through the stone and left a path behind. The floor dipped. The light from my headlamp grew dimmer, not because of battery loss. I checked, but like the dark was eating it. There were markings. Not graffiti. Symbols. Repeating arcs, triangles within circles, blackened stains shaped like spirals. I heard voices. At first, I thought it was surface echo, but they came from below. From ahead, from behind. Not words, but syllables. Sounds. With no structure, chanting with no rhythm. Like a language still being born. I turned to leave, but my path had changed. The tunnel behind me was longer. I could feel it. The walls weren't the same. The sound of dripping water had stopped. No echo. I was in something else now. I ran. I don't know how long I ran. It felt like hours. I fell more than once. My knees were bleeding. But eventually, the tunnel spat me out, not where I started, but near an old drainage culvert on the south end of the Trinity floodplain. My watch said 20 minutes had passed. But my beard had grown. My nails were longer. My camera footage was corrupted. All except the last shot, a 2-second clip of the tunnel behind me. A shape standing in the dark, too tall, too thin, its arms too long, with a white mask where a face should have been. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't tell anyone for weeks, but I haven't been right since. My bones ache like they're older than me. I dream in gray. I hear whispering in the walls of my apartment, and sometimes I still smell that iron-cold wind. Tunnel 6 is real, and it's still growing. Smithville sits about 30 minutes southeast of Austin, nestled among pecan orchards and sleepy fields that look like they haven't changed in 100 years. The town has always felt just a little off-kilter, like a picture frame hung. Crooked and forgotten. Locals don't say much about the place. They just live in it. The way dogs sleep through gunshots once they've heard enough of them. Main Street is narrow and cracked, flanked by red brick buildings with ghost signs advertising 5-cent soda and barbershop shaves. There's a diner, a closed-down movie house, and a gas station that never updates its prices. Tourists don't stop here. And if they do, they don't stay. But smack in the middle of town, between a feed store and an abandoned drugstore, stands a clock tower that shouldn't be there. It's tall, too tall for a town that size. Maybe 5 stories. Made of dark limestone that doesn't match anything else in the county. No door, no plaque, no lights, just a narrow soot-stained spire that looms over Smithville like a finger raised in warning. And every night, without fail, at exactly 2:12 a.m., the clock tolls 13 times, not 12. Not once for each hour like it should. 13 people have tried to explain it, claim it's a mechanical glitch or some old wind-up mechanism no one's ever serviced. But no one's ever found a way inside. The city doesn't have any record of who built it or when. It's not on the blueprints or the zoning maps. Hell, it doesn't even show up on Google Earth. But it's there. Always has been. Ask the old-timers and they'll shrug. Tell you it's been part of Smithville longer than they have. One of those things you just live with, like the heat. Or the slow rot of small-town life. In 1997, a postal worker named Eddie Caro tried to climb it. Eddie was a good guy. Dependable. Quiet, the type who whistled while he sorted mail and always left dog biscuits in his pockets for the mutts along his route. He'd been talking for weeks about the tower, saying how it didn't sit right with him. Said it gave him dreams, dark ones full of gears and smoke and faces without eyes. He told his wife, Mary, that he was going to get to the bottom of it. Said he was tired of pretending the town wasn't being watched. She thought he was joking. One morning, Eddie didn't come home from his shift. They found his mail truck parked just off Main Street, still running, the headlights glowing faintly in the fog. His bag was inside, neat as ever, letters stacked like bricks. But Eddie was gone. At the base of the clock tower, they found his shoes, side by side, laces still tied, warm to the touch. The sheriff tapped on the stone with his nightstick, half expecting some hidden panel to open up. Nothing happened. They brought in ladders, drones, even tried explosives once, but the stone just soaked up the blast like a sponge. No cracks, no seams, no sign of wear, like it was never built. Just grown there. A week after Eddie vanished, Mary found a letter in their mailbox. No stamp, no postmark. Just her name, handwritten in block letters. The letter was blank except for one line. Thank you for your sacrifice. She moved away 2 days later. Left the house fully furnished. Never even sold it. Just packed a single suitcase, got in her car, and drove west. Nobody's seen her since. After that, people stopped talking about the tower altogether. Even the kids didn't dare mess with it. It became a kind of unspoken rule in Smithville. You could curse in church, cheat at cards, even spit on the sidewalk. But you never mentioned the tower. Not even when the bells rang 13 times in the dead middle of every goddamn night. Moved to Smithville 2 years ago. Got a job teaching history at the high school. Small town gigs pay better than you'd think, and after my divorce, I needed someplace quiet. Someplace where the world didn't feel like it was constantly pressing in on me. I guess I thought Smithville would be boring, safe. But the first night I spent in my little rented house on Elm Street, I heard the bells. I'd stayed up late unpacking books and drinking beer, trying to ignore the emptiness of the house. Around 2 a.m., the air got real still, like the sound got sucked out of the world. No crickets. No wind. Just dead silence. Then came the bells, low and metallic, each note drawn out just a little too long. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere all at once. I counted 13 rings. And then silence again like a held breath. I asked my neighbor, Old Man Dupree, about it the next morning. He just stared at me for a long time, then went back to trimming his hedges. That's how they all are here. Closed up, hollowed out. Like they've all seen something and agreed, silently, to pretend it never happened. But I can't stop thinking about the tower. It doesn't make sense. None of it does. I've researched every local archive, talked to surveyors, gone through every building permit filed since 1880. Nothing. No mention. It's like it exists outside of time. Like it came from under the town instead of above it. Last week, I decided to walk by it after midnight. Main Street was empty. The windows of the storefronts looked like blind eyes, and even the streetlights seemed dimmer than usual. The tower loomed above, black against the stars, its clock face glowing faintly. Though I couldn't tell what lit it. As I got closer, I felt a pressure behind my eyes, a humming deep in my bones. Not a sound exactly, more like something old and slow waking up, something that noticed me. At 2:12, the bells rang again, but this time I swear I saw movement at the top, not a person. Not quite. More like a shape, hunched and trembling, as if something had pulled itself halfway into this world and wasn't sure it liked what it found. I backed away, fast. Didn't stop until I got home, locked the door, turned on every light. Since then, I haven't slept much. I hear ticking everywhere, faint, just at the edge of perception. Like a clock buried inside the walls. Yesterday, I found a letter on my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a blank sheet of paper with one sentence printed in block letters. It has chosen you. Tonight, I think I'll try to climb the tower. I don't know why. It's not a choice, really. It feels more like gravity. Like the clock's ticking isn't measuring time anymore. It's measuring me. And I keep thinking about those bells. Why 13? Why that exact time? I think it's a countdown, not to midnight. Not to death. To opening. If you find this, don't come looking. Don't try to understand. Just leave Smithville behind and never look back. Because I think the tower was never built here. I think it was sealed. They still call it the Strip, even though it's barely clinging to life anymore. A jagged few miles of broken pavement and gutted neon signs along old Route 66 on the east side of Amarillo. Before the interstate came through and butchered the Mother Road, this place used to buzz families in station wagons, truckers chain-smoking camels, teenagers cruising for fun with the windows down and radio screaming out Buddy Holly or Merle, diners open all night, motels with kidney-shaped pools, greasy food, glowing signs, laughter. Now, the laughter's long gone. These days, you can drive past the Strip and not even realize you're in it. It's like a graveyard that doesn't want to be noticed. A handful of broken-down gas stations, empty motels with roofs sagging like old skin, and a diner, the one people whisper about, Blue Star Diner, still standing. Still there. If you roll your window down, you can sometimes smell it, not rot, not mildew, but pancakes. Buttered, warm, sweet with syrup and cooked in bacon grease. And when the wind cuts just right, there's music, too, soft, old, a jukebox hum from somewhere inside. They say it hasn't had power since the early 2000s, and yet, the neon sign still works, sometimes. Not all the time, not even most nights. But if you go at the right hour, just after midnight, the letters flicker back to life in that buzzing, blue-green glow. Blue Star open 24/7. Locals don't talk about it anymore, not really. They'll steer you away, tell you to go to the IHOP on Coulter or that new food truck lot off 6th. But they won't say why. If you press, they'll shut down. If you really push, you might get a drunk old man to mumble something about ghosts or time warps or echoes, but that's as far as it goes, except for what happened to that tourist. His name was Nate Rowland, early 30s, travel blogger. Had a whole YouTube series where he visited abandoned places across the U.S. ghost towns, forgotten motels, old theme parks. He'd explore at night, narrate as he filmed, drone shots and wide-angle lenses, and a SMR-style commentary. His videos had a calm, eerie vibe. So when someone tipped him off about the strip in Amarillo, it was perfect. He arrived on a Tuesday, checked into a La Quinta, ate at the Big Texan, told his followers on Instagram he was going to check out an old haunt after dark. His last photo was a selfie in front of the Blue Star, the sign behind him flickering just faintly. "Something still cookin' in Amarillo," the caption said. He never checked out of his hotel. Police went through his room. Camera gear still there. Wallet, passport, rental keys. But no Nate. His car was found parked on the side of the road. Right next to the diner. There was only one thing new, a photo. Uploaded directly to his cloud at 3:07 a.m., the time matched the diner's supposed active. Our locals called it the feeding window. The photo showed the inside of the Blue Star, one booth. Red vinyl seats. Table sticky with syrup. Behind the window, neon light bled through the glass like a wound. And Nate was sitting there, smiling. Wide. Too wide. His eyes were empty. Not black. Not bloody. Just blank. Like someone had wiped the hard drive clean. Like the light inside had been turned off. His grin stretched almost to his cheeks. Like he was trying to imitate happiness, but didn't know how it worked anymore. There was no one else in the photo. No camera in sight. No reflection of whoever took it. And the angle, it was wrong. Too high. Like the lens was hanging in midair, hovering. That was a year ago. I hadn't thought about Nate for a while. Not until my own brother disappeared. Jonah. He wasn't a travel blogger. He wasn't chasing ghosts. He was just restless. Divorced, laid off, drifting. Said he needed to get away for a while. Clear his head, he texted. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, and then I got a message. No words. Just an image, uploaded to our shared family cloud. Blue Star Diner. Booth in the corner, and there was Jonah, sitting alone. Same smile. Same eyes. Same nothing. That's why I came to Amarillo. I'm not a believer, not in ghosts, not in demons, but I believe in places. I believe there are scars in the earth, places that remember things too terrible to let go. And I believe the Blue Star is one of them. I got there at midnight sharp. It looked like any old diner if you squinted. Peeling paint. Windows smeared with decades of dirt. A dead payphone out front, but the sign was lit. Just barely. Blue Star open 24/7. The letters buzzed. The O in open kept flickering out. The door was unlocked. Inside, it smelled like pancakes. Warm and fresh. The kind our mom used to make on Sunday mornings before she got too tired, too sick. It hit me like a memory, but not mine. It was someone's memory, and it wanted me to feel it. The booths were dusty, vinyl cracked. But one, the corner booth, was clean, almost polished, as if someone had just eaten there and wiped the table down afterward. There were no sounds, no music. Just that smell. I pulled out my phone. The camera app glitched, flickered. I turned it to selfie mode. My own face looked warped. Like I was smiling when I wasn't. Like my mouth didn't match what I felt. My eyes looked gray, dead. I dropped the phone. It slid under the table. When I bent down to get it, I heard something move in the kitchen. Not a rat, Not a drip, footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I backed out fast. Heart pounding. The jukebox kicked on. No one touched it. The song was Blue Moon, soft and warbled, like the record was water damaged. The lights above the booth came on. Soft yellow glow. And then I heard him. "Hey, man." My brother's voice. I turned. He was sitting in the booth, same smile, same clothes he wore in the cloud photo. Same eyes, black holes with glassy covers, like something was sitting behind them and watching me. "Been waiting for ya," he said. I didn't move. He leaned forward slowly, joints creaking like they didn't belong to him anymore. "You hungry?" I ran out the door, didn't want to open. I had to shove it, hard. When I got out, I didn't stop. I didn't look back. My car didn't start the first time. I pounded the wheel, screamed. Second try, it caught. When I got to the hotel, the receptionist said I'd already checked out, that I'd left 2 hours ago. Checked my phone. There was a new photo. Me. Sitting across from Jonah in the booth. Both of us smiling. Both of us gone behind the eyes. I never took it. I've tried deleting it. It comes back. I smashed the phone. Bought a new one, new account. But the photo found its way in. Sometimes I wake up at 3:07 a.m. and smell pancakes, even when I'm hundreds of miles away. And I know someday soon I'll hear the doorbell, and the diner will be waiting. There's a stretch of country in far west Texas that the maps won't claim. Look at Google Earth and you'll find a beige smear about 15 miles north of Presidio, tucked between rust-colored arroyos and the dry ribcage of the Shinati Mountains. No name, no roads, no nothing. Just a glitch, a blur, like the satellite didn't want to look too closely. Local hikers call it the blank spot. People who live near Presidio, the ranchers, the border patrol, the oil hands, they know. Better than to ask about it. They don't point at it. They don't drive near it. The few who've tried either came back pale and broken or didn't come back at all. I didn't believe any of that crap when I first heard it. My name's Travis Mullen. Used to be a freelance journalist. Spent a lot of time chasing ghost towns and borderland myths, La Llorona sightings in Del Rio, shadow people rumors from El Paso truckers, and once a supposed haunted missile silo outside Midland. I wasn't a believer, just a collector of strange stories, mostly to sell to niche mags or podcast producers looking for the next spooky soundbite. I heard about the blank spot from a park ranger named Danvers who used to work the Big Bend trail loops. We were drinking long necks behind a cantina in Marfa, just shooting shit about desert weirdness. He said, "There's a place west of here the GPS don't like. You start walking that way and your compass spins. You'll see a road that ain't. There, a town that don't stay put, you get seeing, you're done." That night, drunk and curious, I punched the coordinates he gave me into my Garmin. It marked nothing but scrubland. No road, no buildings, no man-made anything. But it did show a faint topographic depression shaped like a bowl, perfectly round. Man doesn't make shapes like that by accident. 2 weeks later, I was headed out. With a pack, 2 GoPros, my DSLR, a drone, and enough water to last 4 days. I also carried a Sig Sauer P365, which I had a concealed license for, even though I'd never needed it for more than coyotes. I told my girlfriend I was heading to study some ruins near Terlingua. She didn't ask questions. We were on the edge of a breakup anyway. I parked my Jeep about a half-mile off Highway 67 and started hiking north into the scrub, following a hand-drawn sketch Danvers had scrawled for me on a napkin. It took me half the day to get close. The land sloped into a basin filled with low mesquite and cholla. The farther I went, the quieter it got. Like the world was putting a hand over its mouth. At exactly 4:37 p.m., My phone pinged a cell tower and sent off a scheduled GPS ping to my email. I kept moving. That ping would be the last thing anyone ever heard from me. I found the road an hour later. It wasn't on the map, not on satellite, not even on the old USGS topo charts I'd downloaded. It was a faded, one-lane dirt track that curved unnaturally east, like it wanted me to follow it. And I did. I followed the road until the wind stopped. I don't mean it died down, I mean it stopped. Dead silence, no breeze, no insects, no sound of boots crunching gravel. I looked. Up. The sky had turned the color of old dishwater. The sun was a pale coin behind thick haze. My skin crawled. Then I saw the town dot. It came into view like a mirage, but it didn't shimmer or fade. It snapped into reality. 1 second it wasn't there. The next buildings, an old gas station with rusted pumps, a squat brick diner with sun-bleached letters that read "Eat" above the door, a 2-story motel with broken shutters hanging limp like dead tongues, but no people, not a single person. Not a bird, not a car, not a whisper of life. Just those buildings standing in the dust like they were waiting for something. I filmed it. Shot stills. My hands were shaking, but I told myself it was just the adrenaline. Towns don't just appear. There had to be an explanation. A forgotten movie set. An abandoned project. I stepped into the gas station first. It smelled like dust and rubber and something sour underneath. The walls were lined with shelves still stocked with ancient cans of beans and powdered milk, all labels faded to yellowed ghosts. There was no dust on the counter. No spiderwebs. That's what struck me. It should have looked abandoned. But it didn't. It looked ... paused ... then a door creaked open behind the counter ... no. One was there. I backed out fast and crossed the street to the diner. My boots echoed on the cracked blacktop. Every building was in the same condition, not ruined, not weather-worn, just empty. Like the people had stepped out 5 minutes ago, I took photos of a jukebox in the corner of the diner. It was playing. Nothing, but the lights blinked slowly, steadily. There was no power line running to the building. That's when my phone buzzed. One new message, from my satellite SMS app, sent to my girlfriend automatically. They see me now. Only I hadn't typed that. I stared at the message until a sound made me jump, a soft, rhythmic thump 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 from upstairs in the motel across the street, like someone pacing. Bare feet on old boards. I should have run. I know that now. But I was caught between fear and fascination. I crossed the street and pushed the door open. It swung wide on silent hinges. The lobby was cold. Not desert night cold. Meat locker cold. And the air smelled like old pennies and something fouler underneath, like mildew and rot. I called out, "Hello?" Footsteps stopped. Silence. Then. A door on the second floor creaked open. That's when I heard the voice. A whisper. Right behind my ear. No breath. No body. Just a whisper that wasn't made by lungs. It said, "Don't look up." I froze. Every hair on my arm stood up. I didn't want to turn around. I didn't want to look anywhere. My legs wanted to run, but my brain kept screaming, "Don't look up." I looked up. And saw the faces. Dozens of them. Pressed against the ceiling like drowned corpses held in gelatin. Pale, eyeless, mouths open in silent howls. One of them, I swear to God, looked just like me. That broke me. I turned and ran. I don't remember how I got out of that motel. I don't remember crossing the road. My next memory is tearing. Through the scrub brush, flashlight bouncing wildly, bleeding from both hands, lungs burning. I reached the Jeep at 2:14 a.m. and peeled out so hard I almost flipped it. I didn't stop until I reached the gas station outside Marfa, where the clerk asked if I'd been in an accident. I told him I fell off a ridge. He nodded but didn't believe me. My gear was fried. SD cards corrupted. Photos gone. Video blank. GPS logs erased. The only thing that remained was that one satellite text. They see me now. Time stamped at 5:11 p.m. I left Texas a week later. But something didn't leave me. At night. Sometimes I wake to silence. No crickets. No cars outside. Just that soft whispering hum, like breath inside my pillowcase. And last week, I took a photo of myself on a hiking trail in Colorado. When I zoomed in later, something was wrong with the background. In the far-off corner, near a stand of aspens, was a building, a rusted gas station, with a broken sign that read, "Eat." And just beyond it, in the grainy shadow, a figure, smiling, waiting, because once you see the town with no name, it sees you back. And it never forgets.